probably know Vistaprint for business cards. Yeah, we print that. But did you know we also print that?
Okay, the city of Campbell is no longer requiring face coverings to be worn inside city facilities. However, all are welcome to wear a face covering should that make you feel more comfortable, and should health directives from the County of Santa Clara or the Centers for Disease Control change, the city will comply. So I will call to order this regular meeting of the City of Campbell City Council for Tuesday, September 20th, 2022. This regular city council meeting is conducted in person and via telecommunication and is compliant with provisions of the Brown Act. This city council meeting is live streamed on channel 26, channel 88, the city's website, and on YouTube. And Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gibbons. Here. Councilmember Lopez.
Here.
Councilwoman Landry.
Present.
Vice Mayor Bybee. Present. Mayor Resnikoff.
Here. So if everybody would please join me, I'll lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. We have no special presentations or proclamations. We have no communications or petitions. So I'll move to oral request, the portion of the meeting reserved for persons wishing to address the council on items not on the agenda. And those people will get to speak for 2 minutes. Do we have anybody in the chamber that wants to speak? Seeing none. Okay. So I do have a request through our Zoom connection from Sean Mendelson. Sean, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear, Sean. Go right ahead.
Good to see everybody. It's been quite a few months since I've been here touting my climate activist plans and what have you. But I just want to keep it in the mindset of the council and everybody in the chamber there. I've talked every other month with Rob Eastwood about hopefully securing some grant money that will go towards the climate action plan that we all discussed for next spring. I'm a little nervous about the fact that we have some council members coming and going in the new era here, so I want to make sure everybody stays on top of it. I check the agenda regularly to see if it comes up, and I know it's been mentioned a couple times, which I appreciate. And I just want to remind everybody to keep on it, keep thinking about the climate action plan, and let's make a bold one in the future. And I should also point out, as we think about a future with decarbonization of homes and businesses, that there's a great thing this weekend. It's Green Electrified Home Tour. It has nothing to do with me. I'm not promoting it to make anything here, but it's a way to go visit private residents all over the Bay Area and see how they've electrified their homes and retrofitted it appropriately. And I'm going with my own family in Campbell here this weekend to do just that. So I encourage you to look into that. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week and keep up the good fight.
Thank you very much, Sean. Appreciate your calling in.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, we have anybody else that wishes to speak? I don't see anybody online.
We do not.
Okay, thank you. So we'll close the oral request. We'll go to mayor announcements. City Hall is open to the public for in-person services Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. For your convenience, online services, including permits, business license applications, and virtual appointments are available online. Visit the city's website at campbellca.gov to view information for all city departments and services available. Please join me for the annual State of the City address on September 22nd. I'll be discussing the city's recent accomplishments, our resilience during and after COVID, and information on upcoming projects, including Measure O. The State of the City address will be held at Orchard City Banquet Hall this Thursday, September 22nd. Doors open at 5:30 p.m. with the event beginning promptly at 6. Please RSVP to Mayor State of the City at campbellca.gov by Wednesday, September 21st. That's tomorrow. The city clerk's office is accepting applications for boards and commissions. To find out more about open positions or to apply, please contact the city clerk's office at 408-866-2117 or visit the city's website at campbellca.gov. The Friends of the Heritage Theater are currently recruiting new board members and volunteers. For more information, please email FOTH Theater, that's FOTH as Friends of the Heritage Theater with an RE at the end at gmail.com. The Campbell Heritage Theater Fall 2022 Spring 2023 season will go on sale on Thursday, September 22nd. That's this week. For a full lineup of concerts or to buy tickets, please visit campbellca.gov. The 12th Annual Caregivers Count Conference is a free virtual conference for families and friends caring for an older adult. This year's conference is a 4-part series virtual event. The dates are September 24th and October 1st from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. The topics include self-care, strategies for dementia caregiving, long-term care, and fall prevention and home safety. The conference is free and registration is available at caregivers.com. count.net. And lastly, live music is coming back to the Ainsley House this fall with a series of 4 concerts by talented musicians. Fall Garden concerts will run through November, with Tony Lindsay performing on October 23rd and Brian Ho performing on November 13th. Registration is required, and for additional information, please visit Campbell Museums, that's plural, campbellmuseums.com. Thank you very much for that. We'll move to consent calendar, where we can take all items under one motion unless somebody would like to pull an item. I have a request to pull item 9. Is there anybody else on council, staff, or the public that wishes to pull a different item? Seeing none, so we can take a motion for items 1 through 8.
I move consent calendar items 1 through 8.
Second.
Motion by Council Member Gibbons, second by Councilwoman Landry. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gibbons. Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilwoman Landry.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bybee. Aye. Mayor Resnikoff.
Aye, thank you very much. And item 9, I had a request from Councilwoman Landry to pull. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes. So.
And I should say, this is the, let me just for people listening, this is the temporary authorization of outdoor dining on private property.
Correct. So what this brought up for me is several years ago, when we were talking about OPA and the parking in lieu fee, and the existing municipal code for parking says that you define how many parking per category, say like office space, and you may need 2.5 parking spaces. Retail may need 3.5. So in the code, it doesn't say if you have to round each line. So if 3.5 is actually 4, or do you total down? And I think in reviewing this, we should be looking at that as part of this update, because places like the Prune Yard are probably going to have to do their conditional use permit again if they keep the outdoor dining. So it's just something to bring up in our, I mentioned it to Rob already, that this should be evaluated. Some cities say if it's 3.4 below, you round down 3. Yeah, so we don't have that right now. So that's why I just wanted to bring that up.
Did you want any other comments?
And I believe we have a desk item on this.
We do. So we need a did you want to make a motion on it, and including the desk item?
Sure, I'll make a motion to pass item 9, temporary authorization to outdoor dining on private property, including the desk item. Did I read the right thing? I don't think I
Yes.
read.
Is there a second?
No, I didn't read the right thing, but that's
did not?
okay. No, I
You
read the title, not the
you read the
action.
title, correct.
Okay, so the action is that council adopt a resolution providing temporary authorization of outdoor dining on private property as originally authorized under the declaration of a local emergency resulting in community spread of COVID-19 in the city of Campbell.
You had inferred that, though, says.
Including desk
the
item.
Thank you.
I'll second.
So a motion by Councilwoman Landry, second by Councilmember Lopez. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gibbons. Aye. Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilwoman Landry.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bybee. Aye. Mayor Resnikoff.
Aye, thank you very much. So move to public hearings and introductions of ordinances. We go to item 10. Item 10's got a long description here that's in the agenda, so I'm going to abbreviate that and say this is for an update on semi-permanent parklet programs. And our presenter is
Rob Eastwood, Community Development Director, and my part here will be short. Let me see if I can share the screen to start. Okay, my apologies on the delay. Robbie Eastwood, Community Development Director. Very happy to be before you this evening. This item the council is very familiar with. We're hoping this is hopefully the last stepping stone to getting final authorizations to start this program. Very happy tonight for staff introductions to introduce who will be doing the majority of the presentation is Leslie Parks. She is our Contract Economic Development Manager. You might have been introduced to a few of you to her. We sent out an informational memo and she'll be doing the bulk of the presentation. We also have online our design team. These are the architects we hired to design the semi-permanent parklet designs. And we have Rudy and Vadim both online. So if you have questions on the designs, they are here as a resource to the council also. Just an overview of the presentation tonight. We're going to go over with the council generally what's been in your staff report, some of the key policy considerations. These are the designs that are before you. We have 4 designs that we propose to use downtown. The costs, there's been a lot of questions on the cost, and we're going to go through those. The use of heaters is an issue that's come up with a lot of the restaurants, and we'll talk about those. And then coming to fees and business assistance, there's been some new information on that and the proposal from staff on how to address it. Finally, next steps, what the schedule is going forward. We're going to give you information on what we've heard from our stakeholders. These are both property owners and the restaurants downtown. And then, of course, be available for questions. Before I hand it off to Leslie, just a couple things. We talked about this last time. We tried to use guiding principles. We've learned from a few jurisdictions ahead of us that this, while it may seem simple, these programs can get complicated. And so the 3 guiding principles we've put in just in terms of program design is number 1, make the permit. Number 2, the more design professionals and contractors you have, the more messy the program gets. So a lot of the program parameters is to condense that down, to limit that. And then 2, the devil is in the details. We've been advised from Los Gatos and others. While you might have templates, when you actually customize these parklets to each space, there's a lot of interesting things that come out. So pay a lot of attention to that. So we've tried to focus on those 3 things. And then finally, the parklet standards you'll see tonight. We talked about these early on, going all the way back, I think, to February. 2 principles on the designs. 1 was to create a uniform design aesthetic that complements our downtown, enhances the downtown. And 2, of course, protect our diners from the adjacent traffic. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Leslie, and she'll have the remainder of the presentation. Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. It's either got to come down or I have to go. All right, you got the arrows right there. Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Rob. Again, my name is Leslie Parks. I am the Economic Development Manager for the City of Campbell. My husband wanted me to begin by saying that he was really happy that I got an opportunity to work for a city where I already spend a lot of time and money. We only live 7 minutes from downtown Campbell. So tonight, as Rob says, we're going to provide the last overview of the parklet, semi-permanent parklet program. I'd like to begin by mentioning this is the 5th city I've worked for this year. I know you must think I'm a workaholic, but most of it was part-time project work. Every city that has a downtown or commercial district is opting for different types of semi-permanent parklet programs. There's no one size that fits all. I know you all are probably aware of some other programs that are being implemented. Some cities are offering 2 designs or 4 designs like Campbell. Others are allowing individual designs. In other words, there is no design option. Restaurants can submit whatever design they want. So you can imagine what that process is going to be like. There's also a difference in the materials that are being used. Some cities are using cement. They're using steel frames, steel platforms. They're using grates. Others are using wood, and others are just having the standards out there and letting the restaurants submit their own design. So what we have here is a choice of 2 design options with or without a roof. There's also an option with benches. The parklet without a roof, the estimated cost is about $75,000. The parklet with a roof, the estimated cost is about $90,000. This does not include heaters, a traffic control plan if needed. Some cities have to have a traffic control plan depending on the amount of traffic that is proceeding down the street. It does not include furniture. These are the parklet design options. One is called Orchard. The first one in the upper left quadrant has no roof. Right next to it is the Orchard Parklet with a roof, and below that is the Water Tower Parklet, no roof, and then a Water Tower Parklet with a roof. You can see that the design is pretty exceptional. It's very similar to a design that was adopted and being used in Los Gatos. And by the way, Los Gatos has been implementing their program for over a year now. This depicts the parklet design options. The footings are really critical in terms of the safety of the parklets. Some cities are just allowing wood frame platforms. I mentioned an outreach meeting that last year I was in a wood frame parklet with a wood frame platform when an SUV decided to back into it. And he was going very slowly, but the whole parklet just began to shake, and he didn't even realize that he had hit the parklet. So there is a difference in material as well as design. This gives you an idea of how close a vehicle can be when you have a parklet in a parking space. It can be very close, and so the intent of the design is to provide as much protection as possible for the diners. This is a design concept or a graphic that shows the parklet designs together. You can see they're pretty spacious. Again, some of the restaurants would prefer to have a parklet design that didn't have benches. We have to have benches anchoring either end, but there is an option to remove the benches along the parklet inside. This is it shows the essential pieces of a parklet, everything from the steel railing, the wood bench topping, the concrete footing, which is really important for security and safety. There is grading, removable grading to allow water to flow underneath, and it can be easily cleaned out because that way you can keep food scraps, leaves, etc., and keep the critters from joining the diners. This is a parklet design with open seating, and you can see the benches are anchoring either end, but there is room when you remove the benches to allow more seating. There's also the flexibility of moving some of the tables around. But again, the space is not that huge. It's only 1 or 2 parking spaces. This is hard. I know this is hard to see, but we wanted you to see what the detail was in a cost estimate. This cost estimate was prepared by a contractor who has built parklets before in another city. So it gives you an idea. And again, as we all know, we live in one of the most expensive places on the planet. So everything is more expensive here than anywhere else. Materials now are even more acutely expensive because of supply chain issues, the pandemic, shortages, etc. So it gives you an overall understanding that the total cost without a roof is about $75,000. Adding a roof depends on the material, whether it is fabric or whether it is steel. The other things that can be added are heating, umbrellas, some planters, etc., irrigation. It just depends what else the restaurant wants to add. Just to give you an idea, Los Gatos and Morgan Hill parklets have similar design. They have 2 design options with or without a roof. Los Gatos has been underway with their program for over a year. The parklets are costing about $80,000 to over $100,000. They're also dealing with many more restaurants than most cities. I think there's 35 or 36 parklets that are being built. Morgan Hill is going to allow individual design choice in addition to a choice of 2 pre-designed parklets. Redwood City is opting for wood frame platforms and frames with several design options. The estimated cost of wood frame parklets is about $30,000 to $50,000, not including all the accessories. Heaters have been a major subject of discussion. Parameters for heating options. We are proposing that propane or electric be allowed under a metal roof, or if there is no roof at all. Again, every city is dealing with heaters differently. Redwood City is not allowing any heaters at all. There will be a requirement for height and distance that you'll see in the next graphic in terms of the heaters, location to the roof, proximity to the roof. The power source is also going to be important, and it may be necessary for the restaurants to upgrade the power in order to have electric heaters. This will give you an idea of what the parklet heating options are. You see the propane, and then you also see the heaters which are mounted underneath the roof. We are looking at allowing extensions above from the building, but again, we have to look at this. The safety will have to be looked at by the fire marshal. Business assistance. I know that council previously considered providing grants for the parklets. Unfortunately, the city attorney advised us that applicability of prevailing wage will be applied to grants, and that's true of any grant, cash grant that is given by a public agency to a project. The contractor who submitted the cost estimate you saw tonight, he says that prevailing wage will increase the cost 30 to 35%. So you can see a $3,000 grant doesn't go very far. It won't even cover the incremental cost of the prevailing wage. Grants are also subject to income tax, and the city will need to 1099 the grant recipients and execute an agreement, and more than likely require some kind of documentation to demonstrate what the money was used for. I think ARPA money is being used as the funding source for the grants. We looked at an option to reduce the permit fees, and after we worked on this, we were able to come up with an option that actually provides a much greater net benefit to the businesses. It's going to recommend reducing application fee to $500. The city can cover up to $2,500 for construction plans. It will remove the $3,000 security deposit for taking down the existing parklets, defer the annual $602 compliance inspection fee till next year. So it's a greater net benefit to the businesses by reducing costs to about $4,000 to $7,000 per parklet. It's not cash, but it's a greater direct benefit. Again, council may opt to choose for financial grants if they so wish. We did one last round of stakeholder outreach. There was a community meeting held September 12th. About 5 stakeholders attended. The primary concerns were the parklet costs, the small grant amounts, and the grant conditions and availability. Those were the primary concerns. We did a business outreach survey. There were 17 responses, 9 were restaurants, 5 were property owners, and 2 were others. We don't know what others means, but the total was 17 responses. We have about 7 that are definitely yes to participate in the program, 5 probably, 2 possibly, 2 probably not, 3 definitely not, 8 would like parklets with no roofs, 7 with parklets with roofs, 7 businesses would like 2 spaces, 5 would like 1, 3 would like no benches, and 2 said they were just simply too expensive. And there were further comments about design. And I think a copy of the survey summary was included in the staff report. So the schedule that we are proposing is to take applications sometime in October, date to be announced. Application process will be open for 45 days. The applicants will maintain their temporary parklets. New parklet construction is anticipated to start sometime in January 2023 to March 2023. The parklets that are remaining are those businesses that don't opt into the new semi-permanent parklet program. Their existing parklet structures will be removed by January 9th. With that, staff and the designers are available for questions.
Thank you very much, Leslie, and welcome.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Campbell. Are there questions for staff? Councilmember Lopez.
Thanks so much for the presentation. I'm wondering if you looked at other wood options other than redwood, and if that was chosen mainly for aesthetic reasons, and what were the considerations?
The only designs I'm aware of used either steel, concrete, or wood. Other cities, as I said, don't have any design standards. They just have code requirements and certain other standards, and they're allowing businesses to submit designs as they wish. Now, that will, as Rob said, that will probably complicate the process and extend it. But those are the only two materials I'm aware of. I wasn't aware of any other. There may be some, but I'm not aware of it.
So just to clarify, in the design and the cost breakdown that you presented, we have steel and redwood as part of the designs.
There is,
not either.
Redwood City is using wood.
Mhm.
Okay, and a design concept example I saw for San Mateo, it looked like wood, but they have no pre-designed option. They just had it as an example.
I'm sorry, I may be asking a slightly different question. Could we go in the presentation back to the cost breakdown, please? So right here, there's two costs, and neither of them are optional. There's the steel, which I understand that's not a question, and then there's carpentry redwood in parentheses.
If I could jump in,
Yeah.
the redwood is for the decking of the parklet.
I understand. And so my question is, were there other options for wood that were looked at for that portion of it?
There's only the only kind of wood that really will function well is in that use is redwood or cedar, and cost wise they're about the same, but certainly we could look at cedar as well.
And can you just give a little more context why, as not being an expert in the uses?
So just kind of like any outdoor deck that you might even build at home, most woods are not meant to be exposed to the elements for a long time. And the kinds of woods that are able to be exposed to the elements are redwood, especially on the West Coast, are redwood and cedar. And of course, there's more expensive woods like teak or ipe or anything like that, but that really takes the cost to another level. And so that's why redwood and cedar are the most cost effective and also the most durable woods for the decking.
Thank you. That's extremely helpful.
Just wanted to acknowledge in the record that Rudy Pakravan, that's our design architect, just so the audience knows.
Councilwoman Landry?
Yes. What is the height, the bottom height of the cover?
I believe it's 10 feet.
And then how thick is that? The one that has the vertical in there, how thick is it?
It is 18 inches.
And when you were talking about the decking being redwood, you're clear spanning the 8 feet. There's no interim supports underneath it.
The idea, Leslie, is it easy for you to go to this section, one of the section drawings? Just so we can see that. The idea is that there would be.
You can go back. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, so you can't quite see in this image, but there's a concrete footing at the perimeter. And there would be some kind of wood sleepers under the deck. And then the deck would be attached to those. So there'd be some sort of like pressure treated wood sleepers that go from the curb to the concrete. And then the redwood decking would sit on top of that. Excuse my voice. I have come down with COVID. So I'm a little got a little bit of a sore throat, but.
Okay. I know redwood would look nice, but I'm looking at the $75,000 cost. Did you ever consider plywood like you would a floor in a house?
Plywood is really not going to be durable. I mean, a lot of parklets, I'm sure that you've seen, have put plywood and painted them, but and painted the plywood. It's just not a viable solution long term. And so it's like something that would need to be constantly changed out, which I think is probably more problematic in the long run.
Someone asked me because of the cost, so I just wanted to bring that up.
It's a great question.
And then I don't know if this is for you or for Rob, but regarding the propane, I mentioned to Rob, we have people right now that have a white tank, you can go buy it, Orchards, whatever, it's a white tank, and they stick a heater on top that has a glowing grill. Are we going to say those are not allowed anymore?
I think
So-
that's more of a Rob question.
So the easy answer is if it meets the fire marshal standard, it's allowed. We've got, the fire marshal has weighed in and said electric heaters, no problem. Under the roofs, we're waiting for the final sign off on the different types of propane. So that's probably the best answer, Councilwoman Landry. If there is no roof, a propane heater is allowed.
The tall ones?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. And one of the handouts that was passed out last year to business owners said, don't put the propane heater closer than 5 feet to the building wall, but some businesses are putting it like right up against the business, then they're using those white, round little short ones there. Will that be clarified also?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once we get clarification from the fire marshal in our application process and standards, we'll make sure it's clear to the applicants where they can place the propane heaters.
And then is the gas or the propane heater similar to what Blue Line Pizza used, where the tall wedge or the open flame and the tall vertical pyramid shape or narrow perm? Are we picking this style? I guess I basically am asking you.
Our proposal was not to pick a style, to leave generally the furniture and the heaters up to the restaurant. So that there'd be different types of heaters they could use, but they would just have to meet the regulatory standard in terms of distance and placement.
Okay, let me go through my questions here. Height of roof. Okay, and then this is a question, I think, to Bill. If we as a city pay $2,500 in construction plans, does that count that they would still then have to pay prevailing wage? Because one of the slides said, give them $2,500 towards construction drawings. That still counts as city money when you still need to pay prevailing wage.
If it helps the head of the attorney answering, the approach we were going to take is to amend the contract with Sidell. And it would be strictly working with Sidell to improve the standards for all parklets within the right of way. That's the approach we're using versus something that's sort of a direct subsidy to the applicant coming in.
So does that?
Yes, I think that keeps us in the clear.
So the city's paying directly to the architect
To an architect directly under contract to the city
and they're putting construction plans together with structural,
for an application.
but
right?
that doesn't count as them getting the money.
No, not unless it's being done for a specific location.
So and if you give the contractor the 25 is different or the owner versus us.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
If I may also, a couple of cities are looking at that option because the money is used for design and not construction, which is different. Construction involves labor, and that's what the prevailing wage is addressing, labor, primarily the trades.
Right. I just wanted to make sure because we're pitching in the 25. Where's prevailing wage kick in? Okay. And then I think that's it. My questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Gibbons.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the information, and the presentation helped with a couple of my questions. So I would agree with some of the information in the report and some of the questions about value engineering. What is it that we can do to reduce this cost? I think the fees and all of the things we've done is a great place to start. I did have a question about the redwood decking as well. And so I would just ask that there's one more pass at looking for anything that is reasonably to remove on that. The second question I have is, I was surprised by the picket design. And the primary reason I was surprised by it is when you've been through 2 winters of parklets, one of the biggest issues is side screening and protection from the rain and car splashes. And the picket design does not do that. So my question is, as part of the value engineering, is there another more, I'm going to call it solid material that can be used that would accomplish more in the way of weather protection from vehicles driving by and from the rain? And the same thing goes for the one with the canopy. The canopy doesn't appear to provide for the ability to add drop curtains around the perimeter. And again, I'm going from experience. Others may have difference, but that was last year and the year before was a big deal to the businesses to add the side screens. And we had a problem with code. They had to be open and all of that. So that's why I'm aware of it.
I just to jump in, I do think working with our structural engineer, because of the wind loads, we can't have any side curtains. So that's, and the businesses that have talked to us are aware of that, the ones that we've had stakeholder meetings with, but there won't be any side curtains just because it can be dangerous.
If that's the case, I think it needs to be stated very clearly.
Okay.
Because there will be expectations that curtains can be added.
It's a great point.
So this goes to my interrelated to my next two questions. I think I understand from what your presentation, which I appreciated, that the end seating needs to be there for the structuralness of the intent of the design, which is understandable. But I do think that the businesses would benefit from seeing as much open floor plan as possible to maximize the number of seats, because for example, in here, you'd get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 seats maybe. And when you have large parties, you want to be able to reconfigure, and you want to figure out how long it's going to take you with 14, 18, 20 seats to pay your return on investment. So I think it's important to have some understanding of the flexibility of the layout. And
Sure.
So I guess I'm asking.
Oh, you're so originally the bench went all around the perimeter.
Yes.
And we have modified it so that the issue is twofold. One is related to the footing, certainly, that goes around the perimeter of the parklet. But in some cases, and did we have that slide, Leslie, the one that shows when the crown of there are a couple of roads in downtown Campbell. There's a few parklets or a few businesses that are affected by this condition where the road crowns quite quickly.
The camber.
So the slope makes it so that the footing and curb relationship is a little bit different. And in that case, the bench is really necessary. But wherever possible, we are making it so that you do not need to have a bench all around the perimeter. So you can have as much flexibility as you can get given the structural constraints. So definitely that came up in one of the stakeholder meetings. Originally, all of our parklet designs had benches around the perimeter, and we've now modified it so that unless you're one of those few businesses that really has no choice because of the location, then you'll have a choice. It'll be more flexible.
I'd like to mention that talking to Los Gatos staff, they're really struggling with a lot of their parklets because the camber of the street is fairly sloped.
We can't always hear you.
I'm sorry. I'm talking to Los Gatos staff. They're struggling with many of the parklets because the camber of the street they have to compensate for the platform because the street falls, below. The other thing, and I'll defer to the Director of Public Works, I think there are some ADA requirements about the spacing of seating because again, these have to be ADA compliant and it has to allow for people who use wheelchairs, et cetera. So I know there's a desire to cram as many seats as possible because, to get the maximum utilization, but there may be some pre-existing requirements that have to be observed.
And that's going to be up to the businesses to comply with. The primary problem with ADA compliances on these parklets has been using tables that have a center pilaster as opposed to corner pilasters where the wheelchairs can't get underneath the table. It's as simple as that. There've been an amazing number of lawsuits just on that idiosyncrasy, and clever lawsuits. So that I'm not so worried about. It's really just giving the businesses the flexibility, the maximum flexibility, because this is a huge investment for what could be a very few seats. So, and then the fact that they won't be able to use it in the winter weather is also a concern. Instead of getting 12 months out of them, they might get 9 or 10. And that's a significant factor to be considered as well. Okay, I think those are my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Bybee?
So I had some questions about the design, the wood versus the steel, because obviously the wood is half the price of the steel. But I also understand that safety is an issue, and that's why the steel is being recommended. But I'm trying to understand why the wood wouldn't be as safe as the steel, and if maybe someone could speak to how the steel compares to what we have out there now, how as far as safety.
Sure, I can speak to that. So we've been doing these kind of semi-permanent parklets for several jurisdictions, and Campbell, so we've done it for Berkeley and for Walnut Creek and for Campbell. And so we've benefited a little bit from, learning the process from one jurisdiction to the other. And there's a few problems with wood. Number one is it basically precludes the use of heaters. So if you have wood, no heaters. And the stakeholders really made that clear to us that heaters were very important to them. Second of all, I think that Leslie has certainly enlightened me a lot on, I would say a lot of the other jurisdictions are playing kind of fast and loose with the codes. I mean, if these are semi-permanent, then they really need to withstand, they are subject to a different building code than the temporary parklets. So having wood decking and only wood is actually not even legal. So we'd have to have the concrete. We couldn't just have a wood deck. And then the sort of size of the wood is much, much bigger than the steel. So it's just a much bulkier parklet. So those are really the reasons why we have moved away from wood. One is that the concrete and steel together are very strong. The wood would have to be much bigger than the steel, would be bulky, less visually kind of open, and then you couldn't use heaters. And I think that for those three reasons, we decided with city staff to not explore wood. And that has been our experience in these other jurisdictions as well. Which is why I'm really surprised to hear that there are some jurisdictions where they're just allowing kind of essentially what amounts to a temporary parklet as a permanent parklet, because that is definitely grounds for litigation. If anything happens, it's illegal. Does that answer? Does that help?
It answers and explains a whole lot. Something that I didn't know before. So thank you very much for that.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask a few, I know there's some others who want to come back in. Let me ask a few questions. So once these are built, maintenance costs, cleaning costs on it, this all falls to the restaurant?
Correct.
Okay, so you answered, I think, some of this, Rob, but with regards to propane versus electric heaters, is there a big difference in cost to the restaurant, one or the other?
I can chime in on that one. I think the cost of the heaters is maybe a wash. The issue with the electric heaters is whether or not the existing business has a panel that can handle those electric heaters. So my guess is most will not. It's possible that some will, in which case it's kind of a no-brainer for them because they don't have to worry about storing propane tanks or anything like that. But for the ones that don't, if they want to upgrade their electrical panel to be able to handle an electrical heater, that's a big upfront cost, and on the order of 25, 30K probably.
Okay, thank you. And I think this was answered, but the other issue is, for example, if we went with wood, then we can't use heaters. Is that what I heard Rob say, I think?
Correct.
I think does the wood though doesn't preclude or doesn't preclude the same type of roof, or no, or it's just a little bulkier structure, you said?
Correct. The wood, if you use wood structure, it would be much bulkier. That is correct.
So wood would make more sense if in fact we decided to build without a roof. Wood would make more sense in that case. It'd be cheaper in that case, and they could still use umbrellas, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but with wood, even umbrella, no heater.
No heater. No, I think you could have a heater. I mean, if you're using wood on the railings, I think the heater needs to be a certain distance away from the railings. And since the parklets are so narrow, they might run into some issues. So yeah, I think the wood would essentially mean no heaters.
So just in looking how to reduce cost, wood is certainly a cost reduction, and no roof would be a cost reduction. So it's a possibility. Umbrellas are a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Can you go back to the slide that showed the survey results? Okay, so do I understand this that now we're down to possibly having 12? I thought at one point it was 16, I thought, or 16 max.
We had estimated, we had put a cap of 32 parking stalls, which would be 16 with 2 each, correct?
Okay, but it looks like even if we're including possibly, it's today 12. So do we know who these 12 are? Are we still operating by some survey that we don't know who the respondents are?
Yeah, and we heard the council last time on, hey, give us a bit more details on who's participating. I'd say generally, yes, some who participated, as Leslie said, it said others, and they elected not to provide information. I'd say generally, I mean, we can go as detailed as you like. It's the larger restaurants that we have downtown, say a Keys or Opa's.
But somewhat speculation still. I mean, here's my comment, I guess, on that, or question. Why don't we're to the point where we should be dealing directly with the 12 or 10 that want to be in. So we sit here and we say 8 want no roof, 7 want a roof, but you can't probably tell me if the 8 are the 10 yeses and probablys, or somebody says, I don't really want to do this, but I would want a roof. The people that said probably not and definitely not, if they're the 5 that want a roof, it's not relevant. So, right. So I think it's time to be talking directly to everybody that got a survey. And if they're interested, they should be willing now to sit down and say, this is what I'm willing to do. I heard from the consultant said before, just a comment, heaters are very important to them. Could be, but to who? So I don't know. I don't know if they're important to the 5 yes and 5 probably, or I'm really not going to do it, but if I did it, I would want a heater. So I think we have to now know exactly who we're talking to.
Sure. I'll say it this way. This is the second poll we've done. I'd say the numbers have been consistent from the beginning, generally that 5 to 12 range of folks who'd like to be in, and that hasn't moved. I'd say talking to the stakeholders, I know cost is a huge consideration, and I like if the chamber president is here, I know he's talked to restaurants also. My sense is the cost would have to come substantially down, at least by half, to move the needle on how many are opting in the program. And that generally, if there's some small reductions in costs, we're going to see the same amount of restaurants opting in or out.
I guess what I'm asking is, could you don't have to tell me now, but could you say the 2 who are probably not and the 3 who are definitely not are these 5 businesses? Do you know that?
Generally, yes.
Generally, but so it worries me that first of all, that maybe we're wasting time talking to them and getting input from people who aren't going to do it. But the other thing is, I guess I'm asking at this point, why not just have everybody that's interested be open and say, this is what I want, this is the cost I need, this is roof, no roofs, heater, no heater, whatever it is, and really get down. We're going to speculate here and make decisions, and we're guessing at these survey results.
The challenge, Mayor, is that we asked for contact information at the end of the survey, and many of them, which is typical surveys, declined to provide it.
Right.
So we don't know. They wouldn't even provide an email address. We know definitely who the 5 are that would like to participate. I'll go back through the survey to see if I can correlate the probablys and see if they have any contact information. But this is a struggle I've had in every city.
Sure.
Is in every downtown trying to have a list of businesses that has current and accurate contact information. We have to rely on business licenses, and the city's business license list, even though it categorizes restaurants, it has no email addresses. So it's very hard to reach out to the owners. We thought about going door to door, but the problem is the owners are often not on premise when the restaurant is operating. You have to rely on somebody giving information to that owner. So we can go back. I will do that. I can contact the S's. I think the probablys may have, maybe half of them have contact info, but the others decline to provide their contact info.
So
Okay.
you answered, I guess, the question I was going to follow up and ask is why not just go there? I mean, I asked that, Rob, before, and it's no reflection, Leslie, on you. You weren't here, but why don't we just go down? We're a 2-minute walk, go down there. And if Randy's not there, you go back with Randy. Just keep going back, because at this point, I'm worried that we've got input here, and some of the input that we would feel is significant might be from the 5 people who are absolutely out of this program. So I appreciate that. And maybe in a bigger city, it's a problem. But Rob, I would guess, can you identify the 17? I'm going to guess yes, easily, right? 17 respond. Probably. Who responded? Wouldn't be that hard to keep going back till we get them all. I mean, that's just my take. So, okay, I think, let me just see. Yeah, that's it. I think,
I just have one follow-up question
Yeah, and then-
regarding the
yes,
fees.
and then we'll go to
and the
Councilwoman
survey.
Landry.
So that survey was actually distributed prior to the information that came out as to what exactly the subsidy was going to be on behalf of the city, if there was going to be a subsidy. So a business may have answered, yes, I want this, without realizing what the bottom line cost is going to be. So I don't know that the survey is really valid. It may be, but without them having that advanced information, it might have been a different result on the survey. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. And before we go to, just before we go to, just a comment I'll make, that when we open this up to public hearing, I see we have the chamber president here. I don't know if he intended to speak, but I'm going to ask you to come up, and maybe you have some information on people we've talked to directly. So just a heads up, you're going to be on the spot. Councilwoman Landry.
Councilmember Bybee or Vice Mayor Bybee asked one of my questions of when did the survey go out and did they know this $70,000 cost estimate? It sounds like they didn't know the cost.
Yes, when the survey link was sent out, there was an introduction that said that it included the designs and the estimated cost.
Okay.
What I don't know, as because I'm late to the game, what I don't know is if businesses were aware that the grants were going to be in the range of $3,000. I thought that they were aware of it. In which case, $3,000, the five that have said yes, my guess is they are not considering a grant in their decision process. They want they're the larger restaurants, so they probably have more resources to pay the cost of construction. But unless I'm wrong, I thought the grants were always in that range of 3,000. They were never higher than that.
So who are the 5?
I believe the 5 are Sushi Confidential, Key, Willard Hicks, Opa, Moe's, and what's that? Katie Bloom.
Okay. And so when you're looking at Moe's and Opa and Hicks, that's 3 businesses. Does that mean they get 6 parklets?
They get 2 spaces each.
They're 3 businesses though.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, Rob's doing something with his hands there.
Yeah, I think they've been aggregating their space. So roughly what you see today is what they would get going forward.
How many do they have? 4?
I believe so. I don't know that number offhand.
Okay, well, I would want that clarification because if each business is allowed 2 and there's 3 businesses there, that would be 6. They'd fill up that whole block, pretty much that side of the block.
Yeah, it's a limitation of either 2 or the total expanse of what's in front of your business. They couldn't expand beyond in front of other retail businesses. So it's those 2 things together.
So even though it's 3 businesses, the width of the 3 businesses is what's containing
That is
that you
correct.
can't go, okay.
Correct.
Okay, and then can you go back to that section? The elevation that showed the roof? Okay, so the grade is open. This, I guess, is to the architect. The grade is open or a solid?
It could be either one.
We're giving people a choice of whether they want it opened or not?
Yes, it could be kind of more of a trellis, like a shade structure, or it could be solid.
The grate.
Are you talking about the drainage?
I'm talking about the drainage grate.
Oh, the drainage grate. Yes, the drainage grate will have some thin lines in it. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the roof.
So there are openings in the drainage grate.
Correct.
Okay, and how are those posts that are right there next to the grate being supported?
The posts, they'll have footings underneath adjacent to the drainage grate, and small footings.
Okay, that's not shown anywhere. This 2-foot concrete block wall, I understand the structural aspect of it, but that's so big and bulky, and it cuts down, as a council member, I want to call you Liz, but Gibbons talked about seating arrangement and how many seats you're actually going to get. And I know we're calling these semi-permanent, but you built that thing. That thing's pretty darn permanent. Was there an option to consider core drilling just the posts? Maybe not on the end because you need the barricade on the end, but was it considered core drilling a post footing that you could always go back and take out versus, I mean, this is going to be tremendous to take these things back out. They're almost permanent.
I think the direction from Public Works was no digging below the level of the asphalt. So no core drilling, nothing like that. Everything had to sit on top of the asphalt, which is why there's a bulky perimeter footing. Because in order to prevent overturning, we don't have the depth. We have to do everything in a kind of width.
Okay, and then that brings up my last question is the parklet is 8 feet back of curb to outside edge of the wall. And if you take a 24-inch bench, a minimum 30-inch wide table, an 18-inch seat, and a 12-inch grate, that's 7 feet. And your graphic shows the seat right up against the table. It doesn't seem to be enough room for a person who's actually sitting and pushing themselves out away. They're going to end up on the grate with the peg of the chair. That's why I was asking whether they had open slots in them. It just seems like with that 2-foot bench, we're really restricting the movement on the chair and getting stuck in the grate.
The grates are designed, they're actually meant, they're like heel proof, chair, leg proof. They're thought that they have those considerations built in. So the slots that water passes through are actually quite small.
So 1/2-inch opening?
Probably, or less. And so that's one thing. And the second thing is, no matter, I mean, like I said, depending on where you are in downtown Campbell, there's a possibility that you don't need to have a bench along the full perimeter. But no matter what, even if there's no bench, there's still a person sitting here, and that person is still taking up essentially the same amount of space. So when we've done studies of like with the bench and without, you actually don't gain so many seats. You just have a little bit more flexibility on furniture. That's the main difference. And like I said, we've modified things so that restaurants can have as much flexibility as they can given where they're located.
But I thought you said to have a solid cover, you have to have that 2-foot deep concrete footing.
So yes, to have
20 feet without a post.
So what happens is there a plan view? What happens is you have to have the concrete come in and provide some depth at some point. But depending on where you are with the road, imagining that you are on a site where the road does not crown very significantly, like the slope is not too much, you can have the situation on the left. And what happens is, if you could go to a plan view, Leslie, or just a view where you can see more of the parklet. Yeah, here you go. So you can see here that concrete it doesn't need to necessarily go all the way across. It can come in and be thick at certain points. So that's why I'm saying you don't need a bench along the entire perimeter. You just need the concrete to kind of jog in at certain points. And that's what prevents the overturning.
Okay.
Now, if you have a steep road crown, your situation is a little bit different. And but that's really affects a minimum of, it doesn't affect that many businesses. So most people will have the flexibility that's shown here.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councilor Gibbons, did you have a follow-up?
Thank you. I just had one of the things that we've had noticed at OPA's in front of those businesses, the tree canopy is low. It's maybe 8 feet or so. And if your roofs are at 10 feet, you may have some conflicts with the tree canopies. So I'm not sure. I mean, it's site specific depending on where the tree is in terms of the parking space and all of that. So I appreciate it's not an easy question to ask or answer right now, but there is a potential for conflict between the trees and the canopies, and the fact that the trees also get lit for the holidays. So I would encourage figuring out when you get down to the precious few, 5 or 7, that you can do some site-specific things there. So I just wanted to be sure and mention that tree conflict. And I had one other, and I'll do deference to Dear Public Works. If there is a way to save money, maybe we should look at locating the posts below grade. I mean, I'm not sure what the conflict is because the utilities are obviously there, but you know, I think everything should be on the table until we know. And frankly, I think the mayor just said this. Okay, I know. I realize as soon as I looked at you, I'll hold the thought. Yeah.
Okay, so I think there's no more questions. So there is a question from the gentleman in the front.
Hopefully a clarification. I wanted to clarify a response I gave to Council Member Landry with regard to prevailing wage. If the intent of providing additional design work is to provide that design work for site-specific design changes, that could indeed well trigger prevailing wage requirements.
Okay. So at this point, then let me open up the public hearing, see if there's anybody in the public wishing to speak on this item. Ken Johnson, did you want to come on down? Whether you want to or not, you're going to, but we'll give you your time to speak. But also, I would like to get your,
sure.
If you need a little extra time, I'd like to get your opinion. If you may know specifics from talking to specific property or business owners, you might have some valuable input for us.
Yeah. So good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Ken Johnson, Executive Director of the Campbell Chamber. I had an opportunity to go around and at least talk to the restaurants, and I think what Leslie's saying and Robert's saying, finding the owner there is not always easy, but I made it very clear to them the importance of being heard, and that whether they come or their land, and I also made it a point to say you need to get your landlord to also take the survey and show up. I said, you have a city council that wants to help you, but they don't have enough information. And unless you come and represent yourself and be your own advocate, they don't know what to do. And so when I went around and talked to everybody, it was before the understanding of the prevailing wage issue. And so I'm not surprised that everybody was still interested. Part of that was just saying the city council wants to help, but they don't know what that looks like. They need to hear from you what your needs are. And the fact that nobody showed up tonight to speak concerns me, because you're really in the same boat. You don't know what the restaurants really want. So I think we're at a point now where it's going to be really easy to have a restaurant say, I'm out, just understanding the costs. And then other restaurants saying, I could be in if this happened. And I think whatever, you're right to look at however you could potentially reduce costs to the restaurants. I mean, there's no question everybody wanted to do it till you really get down to what it costs them. So I'm happy, the chamber's happy to help, continue to help however we can, whatever that looks like for the restaurants. But I tried to emphasize as much as I could, you have to be heard and you need to show up, and nobody came. So
okay, Thank you. Any other comments? I appreciate your input.
No, just, we love the design. It's just, there's a lot of time, resources going into this, and with no, keep pushing it down the road doesn't make sense. At some point, the restaurants have to say I'm in or I'm out. And that may simply be the next survey that says I'm in or I'm out based on this cost.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate your support, your help, especially because sometimes this is in conflict of some of your events and what you want to do.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your stepping up to try to make it work. Any other?
No, that's.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else, Raja?
Raja Pallana, 1216 West Hacienda Avenue. Before I make comments, I just want to make sure my comments are relevant. When we say parklets in the public right of way, does that mean these parklets are going to be replacing street parking like how they are right now? Is that what we are talking? Because it's not clear in that anywhere in the documents. Okay. What is the merit in reducing permit fees from 1,500 to 500? If any, it should go up. This is providing additional space in spaces on public right-of-way spaces, and public is being short-handed. That's a 14-seater parklet, right? That's increasing revenue for businesses. City has imposed park impact fees on building ADUs. And even considering reducing permit fee for money-making entity, I don't know how we don't eliminate even for ADUs where we are going to provide housing, which is not there, but we are trying to reduce the fee that is there for a 14-seater space, right? $1,000. I don't know what's the sense here. President Biden has declared pandemic is over. So why do we need these parklets when we don't need these even before March 2020? It's over. That's what the president said. I don't see any information on how does insurance cover this kind of spaces. So if something has to happen in this space, is the city going to be at the risk? Because this is happening on a public right of way. I didn't see any of that. You folks asking questions or anyone else mentioning in the document. Also is city setting a future precedence that it is okay to encroach on public right of way that will benefit the business property owner attached to such a space. When downtown Campbell business can operate with less parking requirements, is it fair to impose parking requirements for residential standards, which is leading into one of the next topics I'm actually here for. To me, this whole thing sounds like, giving taxpayers money to businesses, architects, contractors, and whatnot. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raja. Madam Clerk, is there anybody else wishing to speak?
Can I add something?
Certainly.
This is just back earlier to what you were bringing up, Mr. Mayor. The question that I have for us, a lot of the design is sort of done in a way. I'm happy to change anything.
1 second. Let me allow the public comment and we'll bring it back and then bring it up to Seth.
Sure. Okay, great.
Appropriate. So do we have anybody else in the chamber that wants to speak? Okay, seeing nobody. So now let me close the public hearing, bring it back to council, and please go ahead now.
Okay. So we're happy to make, any changes and go through other rounds. That's absolutely fine. But I wonder, this is just a suggestion. You can sort of take it as you will. Sometimes these things just need to be put out into I don't know that trying to get people to commit to a certain design or trying to get a bunch of people into the same room and telling us exactly what they want may not be so helpful. Maybe the better path would be to say, here's our first round of parklet designs and see if anyone bites. The designs are largely done. And like I said, it's not about us trying to get, more fee for doing more designs. I'm happy to do it as part of the original contract we have. And we can look at wood railings and that's easy to do. But in my mind, trying to find the perfect parklet that suits the most number of businesses before it happens seems like we're kind of never going to get there, especially because we've had now, I've had multiple stakeholder meetings. I'm really surprised none of the restaurants are here tonight. It seems like it's sort of odd to me that they're not engaging more. And so I just wonder, could we roll it out as it is, or maybe with some tweaks and just see how it goes. And if no one bites, then there's not really a loss. Is there? We can maybe tweak again, or maybe a couple people build them and then other restaurants say, wow, look at that. They're making a lot of money. Because my experience with working with Walnut Creek is that these parklets are going to generate, to the point of the gentleman that was just talking, they will generate a lot of revenue for these businesses. They're not, I think the return on their investment from the studies that were done in the city of Walnut Creek are actually quite quick, like within 2 to 3 years. So it's just a thought. I don't know that it makes sense to try to come up with the perfect parklet before. I think we can just roll something out and see how it goes and then revisit. That's just my suggestion, but I'm happy to do whatever you all think is best.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So we're back to council. Anybody want to open up the discussion? Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you so much. I'll try to be as succinct as I can, and really excellent, and I thought incredibly thoughtful staff work. Leslie, our architects, thank you, both in the report and in the presentation tonight, which I see I'm gathering has been updated with some of the questions that came up. So I deeply appreciate that thoughtfulness. Like probably others are going to say and have said, my first concern was the cost. It was something that I had been concerned with all along and had brought up at a number of points. Where I am tonight after hearing the information that's been presented, and one thing I really appreciated, both Leslie and our architects being, and just us as a city in this process, being able to learn from the experience of other cities for better and for worse, and to incorporate that in our planning. I think that's going to be just invaluable in liability costs and just avoiding other issues down the road that we might have otherwise. So where I am essentially is in support of what's been presented by staff for this reason. I'm just not willing to compromise on safety. It would be a huge, and while it's going to be a benefit to the business, we're doing this process because I think we and a lot of community members, or certainly I do, feel that's a benefit to the community as well, to have these spaces for our enjoyment. But I think it would be a massive disservice to the community to in the name of cost to compromise on safety. And we have seen there's just these shocking videos that you see, whether someone's careless or inebriated or whatever reason. A lot of accidents that happen in our region in the Bay Area as a whole from these parklets, from cities that maybe rushed to do them and didn't have the benefit of learning from others as we have. So with that knowledge and foresight, I just couldn't in good conscience bring myself to compromise on some of the safety aspects there, whether to conquer the steel, even if it is going to potentially reduce the uptake of some of these parklets. But also give a lot of credence to what Director Eastwood said, that maybe even just changing from steel to wood, which might be a 30%, 50%, there'd be some cost savings in the cost of the steel, but I'm not sure that the overall cost would be of such a magnitude that suddenly you'd go from maybe 5 to 10 or 12. And I'm not willing to compromise on safety when even the benefit to the business is that uncertain if it's not going to be in the right order of magnitude cost savings. So I'm largely supportive. That said, I'm absolutely interested in seeing if there are other ways that we can reduce costs. And some of the breakdown that I saw in that cost breakdown still came from fees associated with the city. So, and things like a potential traffic plan for some of the businesses. So I think there might still be some things we can do to tweak some of the costs, but just in terms of the materials, I would be really uncomfortable with significantly changing that. The only other thing, this is just my advice to staff, and I think there's been great comments brought up on the outreach process, is to really communicate and over communicate as much as possible. So a lot of the questions that have come up, the reasoning behind why certain choices were taken, I'd really love to see a good, succinct FAQ document that goes out to businesses as part of this, explaining why the concrete barriers are the way they are. For that matter, it seemed like some of the businesses in the survey responses that I read, and as was I, might have been a little bit confused on exactly where the concrete was placed. So just any kind of clarifications, thinking and explain that we have allowed for more flexibility in the process as the architects explained. I think that'd be really valuable. And the reason is, for me, is this, that I think it's going to make all the difference in how successful the program is and how willing businesses are to kind of partner with us on this. If the perception is, well, there's been iteration and flexibility provided, even if we might wish that we had more information, versus, oh, they just went ahead with this process. We can't figure out why, the concrete barriers are there, or this or that, or this material. So any kind of, I don't, over communication, I think would be great here, including what the subsidy will be, because that's always the difficulty when you have like a fee reduction, or, it's like when you get a tax credit, the benefit might be the same, but psychologically it feels very different. You might not even be aware. So knowing that we still are supporting the businesses in a more significant way than if we gave the grants, and explaining the reasoning why the grants don't work. And I really appreciate the city attorney and the thoughtful work done there, but actually breaking that down for the businesses and saying, hey, actually you are receiving this benefit, even if it might be a little bit more hidden in the structure. So I'm sorry I said I'd be succinct, but I think that's all my thoughts for now. Appreciate the discussion.
Appreciate it. Councilman Landry.
Next, thank you. I always find it interesting in this industry when you want to plant something or put a post and everybody goes, oh, it's really simple, just stick it in the ground. It's never that simple. Very complicated, complex when you're dealing with streets. So I do appreciate all the work that's been done. With that said, though, when I asked a question about how thick the structure, how deep it is on the one with the hanging, I guess that's fabric, it's 18 inches thick at a minimum of 10 feet above the sidewalk. And we have street trees with canopies that are not that high. And almost every parklet has a street tree that overhangs over the parklet. So I don't think the 18-inch thick canopy open air structure looks very good at all. And when I asked more questions, you talked about the wood being more bulky in looking, but that 18-inch thick thing is way thicker than any wood that you could possibly use. So that doesn't make sense. I do not like the picket railing. It makes it look like you're in a jail, I think. And the fact that the splashing in the water, the metal grates, even though they still have some openings, they are a lot less than just the pickets. I find it interesting that you're putting in that thick of footings, but you won't be able to have drop curtains. We got one place out here that has corrugated metal siding to enclose the whole outside because of that. So I would think that the structural design would have the ability to hang curtains. I think that is important. I like the rounded corner option. I think it's called the orchard one, but it's got the picket fence, so I don't like that. I was wondering if on the orchard parklet with the cord or the metal panels versus pickets, if you could angle one on the corners so you could still have the round corners of the concrete structure, but a 45-degree angle and have that solid panel.
You could do that. You could do the rounded, more solid metal. You don't have to do the pickets. You could do that either. You could do either one for sure.
I think rounded metal panels are going to cost a lot more than straight panels. That's why I was thinking at a 45, it could be a straight panel. We didn't talk about whether the outside of the wall could be painted with the sign. Some of these cities that are doing it with some in Los Gatos, they've painted a logo or a sign on the outside of the concrete wall. We did not discuss that, and that would be a question for me. I'm concerned about propane. We're over here looking at reach codes and taking out gas and for electric heaters. And now we're saying it's okay to stick a freestanding propane tank out there. I do understand the electrical cost of hardwiring it, but I am not in favor of those short little white propane tanks that just, one, they look terrible, and two, it just seems like it's kind of an accident waiting to happen. I think the roof of the height of the roof is too tall. You can do residential interior height of 8 feet. That would certainly help bringing it down. The 4-inch posts look kind of wimpy compared to how high and tall this structure is. And again, I know we're looking at cost. So that's a concern. I just want these to look nice. Let's see here. So one of the thoughts that Councilwoman Gibbons also mentioned was we pretty much flat out said to start with no digging in the street. Well, when that might actually, I know you got to deal with utilities and what to work around, but it seems like that might end up being a cheaper option to core drill a footing and put that in. But that's not been an option offered. And then regarding what the city attorney said as the last comment is, if you're doing site-specific technical drawings, then that might kick in the prevailing wage. And then the architect said, but they're going to be very site-specific solutions because of the crown in the road and the drainage pattern and this and that. So you are pretty much going to have to do site-specific. I mean, I don't know if we have surveys or topos or grading, but it just seems like we are going to be customizing these. But the sadder part of that is that we can't pay prevailing wage. I think that's really sad in our economy and living here, that yes, it's going to cost more, but the people that are working don't get prevailing wage. I find that very hard to swallow. Okay, to summarize, I don't like the picket rail. I don't like the 18-inch thick one with the open canopy thing. I think the height is 10 feet is too tall, clear underneath. I think it can go down to 8. I think the posts look kind of wimpy, and whether you use a 4x steel post and fascia it with something to make it look bulkier. The curved corners I like from the other design, but I like the pop panels with the artwork in it. And no propane tanks out of the short ones. And then answering the question of can we use those cylinder taller ones that Blue Line used to have this uniform look? Because that's really what we're going for. And if we're going to have these nice decorative panels, having nicer heaters certainly would go with that. So then regarding the financial aspect, one, please clarify when prevailing wage kicks in, because I do see very site-specific designs in here. And then, we were going to give the $3,000. That's not a big hit, and $75,000. That's not enough. And the 30% increase per paying prevailing wage. What if we contributed more and offset the prevailing wage and the 30%? But it also brings up what Raja talked about is we're losing parking spaces. These people are benefiting by having the outdoor seating. The architect said that they recap the money pretty quickly. And I mentioned earlier under item 9 about kind of this, like maybe having to do your conditional use permit. So parking overall to me hasn't really been addressed. And we've had businesses have to pay in lieu fees for not meeting their parking count. So that's kind of a bigger issue beyond this, but I think that summarizes my rounded corners, height, roof, propane. I think that's all of my comments.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Gibbons.
Thank you. I'll try and tag along on some of the other comments that were made. I appreciate discussion. So I do think it's important to emphasize that when we talk about cost effectiveness and return on investment, we're not trading safety off with costs. We're not. We're just exploring what's the right combination of components at the most cost-effective way of taking this
getting this done. So that brought me to a question which I will just pose here and then maybe pick up on, which is if there are only 5 businesses that want to do this, do we want to do the program at all? That's a hard thing to say, but given the response this evening, I have not received any emails, which I typically do. It's concerning. So we sort of need to have the businesses fish or cut bait. So with that, I will just simply say, I don't care for the picket rails. I'm assuming the picket rails are metal with powder coating. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
That's a very expensive solution. And as I said, it doesn't protect you from the splashing water on the street and the cars. So I'm not comfortable with the picket rail solution. And I also think it makes you feel closed in, and I wouldn't go quite so far as Councilwoman Landry's description, but it does make you feel closed in. I am concerned about the curtains, but frankly, it comes right down to what do the businesses want? And if the businesses don't speak up, we don't need to worry about putting curtains down. So that's something, that's come up before, but whatever. I do question the use of the propane tanks. Those little white things are tripping hazards. They have an automatic shut off, but I many times saw them tipped over downtown. So at the very least, if we have to use propane, which I don't particularly want, I think Councilwoman Landry brought up the consistency. They should all be the pyramid style or something. Yeah, and the one in the illustration's pretty hokey looking. I agree that the exterior should have some graphic capabilities. We're looking to promote our downtown and promote our business. And there was a comment about why do these arrangements for our businesses. It's several reasons. Our downtown is considered the core and heart of our community. And the city makes money from our restaurants. We make a lot of sales tax. So it's not a one-way street. It's not like a residence not utilizing the street. We will get revenue from the seats that are in these areas. So it's an appropriate two-way street for the city to work with the businesses, help them stay alive, help them get back on their feet. Businesses still aren't back to normal. People are still choosing, but many people choose to eat outside whenever possible and not inside. So there's real value to it, at least giving the businesses the opportunity to have it. If they choose it, fine. If they don't, they don't. I do think the 10-foot ceiling height is too high. The 4x4 posts, I believe, are rectangular, and the good old tube steel is less expensive than a formed 4x4. I appreciate the aesthetic. I'm an architect. I appreciate the aesthetic, but if you do round corners, you can do round posts, I think. And all the work, it's very easy to critique what's here because there's something here to look at. It is not disrespecting in any fashion the work that's been done. It really makes it doable to figure out what we really want to do. So I really much appreciate that.
Of course, I appreciate the feedback always.
And then I do have the issue with the prevailing wage. I don't see how we cannot require prevailing wage. I don't think that's doable. And I think I will just simply say that I would hesitate going forward with anything this evening without having staff come back from the businesses, getting very specific commitments. And council then making a decision. If there's only 5, is it worth going forward with this? I mean, OPA has outside seating of their own. Katie Bloom's has outside seating of their own. Sushi doesn't. I mean, so, where do we really stand with this? We just don't know. And in terms of having canopies or not, just as a general comment, I'm okay whether we allow both with and without that to me is a minor point. And, you know, if we decide to move forward, if council decides to move forward, I really think we have to explore some ways to cut the cost.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Bybee.
So I just want to say that we've been discussing this topic for probably the better of 2 years and have come to the agreement that we were going to proceed with a semi-permanent parklet program. So now we have our designs. I want to say that the council does want to support the parklet program. They want to support the businesses, but I find it very disappointing that we didn't receive greater participation from the restaurants and the businesses either tonight in the meeting or online. They could have zoomed in. I wouldn't want to compromise on safety, so I appreciate the explanation about the metal versus the wood and would support the metal structure. I wouldn't want to compromise on our safety. I think that it's really up to the council tonight to make a decision on whether or not we want to move forward with the parklet program and come to some agreement that this is the design that we're choosing. This is the estimated cost. Try and achieve some cost savings where possible and come up with a reasonable subsidy to the business in the way of either reducing fees or whatever that doesn't compromise us with the prevailing wage issue, and make that decision and present it to the businesses and say, this is what we've decided. And then it's up to them to decide if whether or not they opt in or out. I think if we have 1 or 2 or maybe 3 or 4 businesses that opt in, I think that's great for our community and the downtown. And it may inspire others to want to have a parklet or as a goal that they might want to participate at some point. But I think that it's really up to us as a council to make that determination and say, this is what our program is, and leave it up to the businesses and find out what the level of interest is and participation is.
Thank you. Make some comments as well. So I too am interested in reducing the cost without impacting safety. I think we've shown we can do that. So I think Councilmember Gibbons said earlier, all designs on the table. Really look at what are all of our options. I'm not interested in coming up with the perfect parklet. I'm not interested in imposing a design at this point. I think that that's not a cost thing, because I think we're talking $3,000 per parklet to do some kind of customization or some kind of design or so. But I'm disappointed in as Ken said, the feedback, the no appearance here. Somebody mentioned we had weak stakeholder meetings. I think we've had a weak survey, frankly. I think it's time to be talking to people directly. I think the time, Ken called it importance of being heard. I'm going to say importance of being heard and identified. And I understand it's difficult to reach people. One of the businesses, Rob, that you mentioned was, I think is an out of town owner, I'm pretty sure. And for that business, we probably talked to a manager here, but I guarantee you the ones you've named are very well-known businesses here. I could call or text and have a meeting with every one of them for 30 minutes in 1 week. It can be done. I mean, you don't have to walk randomly and knock on the door. You want to meet with Randy, send them a message and I'll meet with you. And I think everybody will be in that boat, with the exception, like I said, I think there's one out of town owner that you mentioned that would be a local manager. I think that has to happen now. And we have to kind of explain what we have and see if there's interest. The question I had, and I think Councilmember Gibbons was the first one to ask it, is there a minimum to proceed essentially? Do we proceed with 1 or 2 or 3? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I'd like to know if we're firm at 5 or 10 or 8 or whatever. I'd like to get that before I can tell you, does it make sense to waive a fee? Does it make sense to reduce a fee from 1,500 to 500? It may all be meaningless if we don't know if there's real interest in doing this. So I would implore staff to do direct communication with all those 17, eliminate the people that are not interested, engage with the people who are interested, get very specific feedback of what it will take for them to participate, and then tell us how many people do we have participating, and we make a decision if we do this or not. And just to answer your other question, why we do this, I think it's been said here. We do this because we're promoting our downtown, we're promoting business in Campbell. We are helping restaurants recover more quickly. We have very good feedback from the temporary parklets. People like them. And I don't think any one person can declare this problem gone. I think that's more of a political statement than a reality statement. Because we still see people that don't want to go inside, and we still see places that could utilize having the extra capacity outside to recover. So I guess I'm of the opinion I can't go through everything here in the recommended actions because I don't know how much of it matters until we really know who is interested. And the way we find that out is getting in front of all of them. And it's only 12 to 17 people. We have to be able to do that in the next couple of weeks. So that's kind of where I am. And I'd like to see it come back at that point. You had a comment, Rob? Or?
Yeah,
I'm sure we have some more comments here, but go ahead. We throw a bunch at you. And I appreciate, by the way, I know it's been weeks and hard work. I get that. I just want something concrete now.
I can present you options. I'll be hazardous to put an editorial comment in first. I think getting more concrete feedback is an area we can push on. Definitely, we can go door to door, and we've talked. I'll just say I've reached out to individual restaurant owners individually and tried to learn from them. But when it came down to are you in, are you out, sometimes you get a nebulous answer. I just will say this, there are very limited options on changing costs and design here. So no matter how often you talk to the restaurants, if safety is still a concern and you want a uniform parklet design, there's not much that can be done to move the needle. Those are the general principles of this program. And as the attorney has said, we're boxed in the other way on the prevailing wage. So there's not much you can do to put more skin in the game of the city of Campbell. So we can do more outreach. We can bring that more back to you. I'm just saying in response to that, can the city move the needle further on reducing cost and providing subsidies? The answer is no, unless you scrap the designs and start over with something that's radically different. So to you, I'd say there's two broad options. One is to, as the design consultant mentioned, move forward, open it up, see who applies. We can come back and report back at that point. The program would start. If there's discomfort at this point of not wanting to keep the program going, if only a few are going to buy in, we could continue this. I'd have to look at the calendar till the next meeting and just come back with more survey results. The window does start to back up a little bit. Everything we've heard from the restaurant owners is we need about a month or two to get applications in, get everything sorted, and construction schedule will be in January through March. But I think there's still room in the schedule if you just like more feedback from restaurants before you take that final step.
I would say just a comment. I appreciate, I respect your opinion on the designs and what can be done and what can't. My concern is I just don't know how many people want to move forward. I can be convinced here, to be honest, that if it's three, maybe three is okay. I don't know, because I never really thought about that. I strongly support the program, but I'd like to know what we're going to get moving forward. And if it's three and we want to do three, that's great. That's okay. But I think we got to get there. I think we just got to get there and understand what that is. Councilmember Lopez?
I guess others have their hand raised. I can raise mine.
I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't looking on the screen at the hands raised. I was looking at lights. Was your hand raised by mistake? Okay.
Okay, I'll go ahead.
My fault for not looking.
No problem. So a quick question and then a couple of comments. Rob, thinking of something the vice mayor said and Rita Bay that said as well, could we, I'm paraphrasing here, but could there be the possibility of kind of a little bit of a rolling process where there's proof of concept and maybe we have a few that do that first and then others get interested? Because if I recall, I may be misremembering, I thought we would have an open and a closed date to the application process that may not allow for that. So could we modify that process to allow for more flexibility on the uptake?
Yeah, we could. I mean, one option would be to keep things moving, open the application date. We could do a check-in. I mean, that's really where the rubber hits the road. They'll tell you if you're in or if you're out. We could do a check-in in council in the middle of that 45-day and do some more polling and extend it if we think there are more who need more time. But that might be a middle ground versus waiting to decide versus putting our heads down forward and just going forward.
Okay. I'd be interested in exploring that. and then just a couple of comments for my colleagues on where I'm at. My inclination, and I could be convinced either way because I think there's arguments on both sides. My inclination is to move forward with our feedback with maybe some modifications, but generally with the recommendation tonight, just because I mean, 2 weeks isn't a huge loss in the process. I would just be concerned that we take 2 weeks and then just go in circles or get these nebulous answers with feedback and maybe not move the needle that much. And we'd still end up in the same place of, at a certain point, it's a judgment call for us of, it's a question that Councilmember Gibbons raised of, would we be interested in if the amount that's interested is this much? For me, the answer, even at this point, even though I'd be interested in more information, the answer is yes. I think 5 businesses with multiple parklets would still be a benefit to the community and the downtown. But again, I'm open to hearing otherwise if we want to wait a couple weeks, certainly see the value and benefit either way. The other kind of out there idea I had that just like a couple of said, just putting everything on the table for discussion is now that we know that the number is fairly low, I think that gives us more of an upper bound to any kind of subsidies or grants that we would have. So I'd be curious if there'd be any interest and I may be alone on this and that's fine, but in actually going back to grants, increasing them, or maybe even capping them now that we know the number is lower. It would kick in the prevailing wage, but may not make that much of a difference. With the current structure of benefits that we have, when you add them up, it comes up to about 7,000. We could do a larger 15,000 or whatever the amount is grant that covers more of the costs. And for those who've had a concern with the prevailing wage, then you have that benefit to the public, but also to the workers, but also greater support for the businesses. I just put that out there to see if there's any interest, but definitely just probably open to hearing arguments on both sides with regards to moving forward. Thank you.
Councilwoman Landry.
Turn on the mic. So I'm going to respond to some of the comments by council. I agree with Ann on, we've spent 2 years talking about this. We've been successful with the parklets that we have now. People from all over are coming. Campbell's the best downtown. We love eating outside. So there is a overall public benefit, and then there's a specific public benefit to the city and the tax revenue, and then whatever other shopping and business they do while they're here. So I don't want to see the program go away. The other thing is keeping up with the Joneses. You build one of these and you'll be surprised how many people may change their mind when they look at, oh, wow, look at that. It looks really cool. Oh, wow, the business has 15 extra seats. Wow, maybe I do want one now. And so it may be this snowball effect as we move forward. In regard to what the mayor said about outreach, and this is a very long thing of here of all these things we have to approve. I can't really say, yes, let's do all these things and do all this money, and one person is really who is going to do this. But again, I said this is a beneficial program, and maybe one spurs on the other people to move forward. I'm supportive of what Sergio talked about. I did mention it also of maybe we need to be giving more money per parklet, and you would have to get up into the 10 or 15, even 20,000 range on the grant to make it worth the difference in paying the prevailing wage. And it's not just prevailing wage, it's documenting payroll. There's paperwork that goes along, which is pretty extensive, but I think we should be paying prevailing wage. It's an expensive place to live. And then what Liz was talking about in do we say no, go away if we don't have 5? So I think I addressed that about one may spur on the other people. I would think at a minimum tonight, we could pick a design because we want to go out to these people and say, here's what it would look like. Here's your limitation. You can't have canopy. You can't have this heater. You can't do that, but you can do this, you can do that, and you can do that. So if nothing else, I would think we would at least hone in on a design. I'm favoring the one with the solid panels with the artwork in it. That kind of goes to our public art thing that we're trying to accomplish. Definitely lower height. That should cut down on the structural design and the cost, and no on the 18-inch thick. So really, to me, there's 2 options: the plan without a cover and the plan with the cover. But I would like to at least have something when we go out and meet with these people to get a commitment that they know, graphics says a lot, and they could say, oh, I really like that. Okay, let's move forward. But it is very imperative that we do know who we are talking about. Is it just Sushi, OPA, and Key, or is there, who are these people that want it? So there's where I'm at.
Okay, thank you, Council Member Gibbons.
Thank you. I will summarize by saying I have no problem going forward tonight with the parameters I think that Councilwoman Landry was just leading up to and others have said. We're supportive of the program. We need a commitment from the businesses that they want the program. So in order to do that, I think we can safely say that the cost of the projects are going to run $75,000 to $100,000. I mean, it's a range, and we can just say, this is what we're talking about. We're working to keep it as modest as possible, but it's going to cost money. I think I know there's the Jones, your neighbor, the Joneses effect, but I also think it behooves the businesses. If 2 or 3 businesses really want it, it would be the right thing for them to try and encourage more businesses to do it, because the more atmosphere that's created downtown, the more it benefits the downtown. It's mutually beneficial. So I think they need to show a little business savvy and camaraderie. I don't want to say 5 is my max minimum number, but intellectually, to actually make a physical presence difference in the downtown, you need a number. 5 is sort of my minimum number. I'm okay having solutions that show, allow people to choose canopy or no canopy. I don't think that's a problem. I think the canopy should be lower than 10 feet. I do think the solid artwork panel is a much nicer aesthetic. Let's see, what else did you ask? So in the motion, I think we have to assume we're going to pay prevailing wage. So that's why I would just say the budget's going to be 75 to 100,000. And the city, depending on legalities of giving grants, the city will explore opportunities to help businesses, but we don't want to make more of a problem than we solve with grants. I mean, that's just the simplicity of it. And everyone's a business person, and they get that. So if you go back and look at the motion, I would say that, let's see, I'm fine changing the fee to the $500. I'm fine saying the verification fee to 2024. I'm fine with basically everything staff's asking. I think the customization of the parklets, whatever, I think those are pretty much all givens. If the program's going to go forward, we have to do all of that. And I would simply offer that the one caveat is before the program fully kicks off, I don't know quite how to phrase it, we need commitments from businesses.
Okay. Vice Mayor Ravi.
Yeah, I agree that we need commitment, commitment from the businesses, and I think it's premature to approve the plan tonight without having talked to the businesses and really knowing what the level of commitment is. And I think that step needs to take place, that we need to go, staff needs to go and say, this is, the council wants to support this. This is what's being recommended. These are the initial design concepts. This is the cost. Are you willing to commit? And then if, there may not be any. I don't know. It's hard to determine if, since they haven't been participating in our dialogue. So I think we need to know the level of commitment before we can move forward with the actual program.
Okay, and I'll comment as well. I mean, I'm fully committed to doing this, but I too want the commitment from the businesses. I don't know what my minimum is. It might be 3. I just don't know. My concern, I'm not against increasing grants. My problem is I don't want to play on negotiating. What if we gave another 10,000? What if we give another 15? We need to know if we're going to go to a grant, is that going to seal the deal and that person's going to move forward? And if it's three, I could probably deal with 3 because I think it will expand. But I'm looking for that firm commitment to say, yeah, we want to move forward and we can do it at this. I think it's premature to do some of what's in the recommended action tonight. To be honest, if the majority of council wants to do that, I'll support it because I support the program, but I think it's going to fall apart in the future if you come back and don't have a defined number of serious people that are ready to seal the deal and do it. So I'm like I say, I'll wait to see if there's a motion, and I have nothing in here that I'm against. I just think at the end of the day, if you don't come back and say we've got these 5 committed or 3 or 4 or whatever it is, it's going to fall apart. So I'll leave it, I guess, to council to see if somebody wants to. I don't know if there's other discussion or somebody wants to make a motion in where we are today.
May I ask a clarification?
Certainly.
If we don't make a motion, we just let this stand as discussion, is that acceptable for this? Or do we have to make a motion?
Well, you do have you have a series of actions before you tonight.
Yes.
So I frame it this way. It's either what I'm hearing is we'd like the feedback from the businesses before we cross that threshold and adopt the ordinances that will officially start the program. And we can do that. Or we want to go ahead and officially start the program. And as we move down the road, we wanted, their option is the program would start, we go out and do the polling. You can always retract, I guess, the ordinances. The program would start, we go out to the polling, we report back to council on what we're hearing. The ultimate test is, will they submit an application? But we can, everything before that, we can get some polling and get some information back to you in the next 2 weeks or 4 weeks, regardless.
If I remember right from the prior survey or the last time we presented, one of the questions was, when does this need to start? And there were some October, November, December, January's. My problem is I don't know who said what. And if the people that are very serious about this say it's got to be done by January and February, then losing 2 weeks is meaningless. If everybody really said we got to get this done by November, we're in trouble. We're going to move fast. So again, I'm back to the value of those answers and the impact of slowing up for 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever. I don't know if it matters because I don't know who said it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just provide 2 pieces of advice, and I could be wrong. Talk to business, talk to them generally. I think at these price points, we will get somewhere between 5 and 10, no matter what. Talk to them,
which would be
left,
great.
right, up or down. You'll just have names, and more specifically, and 2, to really move that needle, there'd have to be a substantial investment. Now, with the prevailing wage, if a subsidy is back on the table, Camel would have to invest something like $40,000 just to make the project break even. And again, if you put that much skin in the game, you're going beyond 5 to 10 businesses. They're all coming back in, and you'd have to multiply that by the number of businesses that would be interested. So it changes a lot of things if you want to put a subsidy in.
Right. But I think that 5 to 10 would be highly successful if you came back with that. And if we also might know, this is what I need to do this. And if we know that, it could be a great program. So
if I may, I think what you're asking in some ways is be careful what you offer, because you have to put the money behind your offer. And I think staff is just highlighting the fact that if we go down these routes and we need $40,000 subsidy per application, we'll go, instead of the steady 5, we will go up to 10, which is $400,000. So we have to be prepared to commit the money if that's what we want to
Or
do.
we commit to a certain, the first 5 or the first, I mean, there are ways we can do this. So I appreciate that. I
But you
agree.
know what I'm getting at, yeah.
Councilmember.
Well, and just to add on to that, maybe as a partial counterpoint, is that we don't have to go to the break-even point. We could just say there's a benefit to doing it. It's going to be in the same order of magnitude for the businesses, but we'll offer more of a subsidy, not enough to break even, but there may be a benefit to doing that. So I just put that out there. I'll just say this for the sake of discussion. I don't think that I hear a majority for moving forward without more feedback. And if we're talking about a couple weeks, I'm certainly fine with waiting for that. I do get a little bit nervous if it goes into a month, and I'm just aware of capacity and just everything else that we're doing. But certainly 2 weeks, I'd have no issue with. I just wonder if that's realistic, if that's closer to what we need to stick to.
And city manager, let me ask you, if we did that, do we need to take no action? Do we need to take an action to move it to a date, continue to a date uncertain?
A couple of just comments. One, there is answer the second one first. That's easier. There was a public hearing introduction tonight, so we don't have to republish. We would probably want to continue that hearing date to a date specific. And then with regard to the timing, we could reach out, but when we talk about coming back in 2 weeks, that even though that seems like we have 2 weeks, really that staff report's published a week from tomorrow. And it actually, according to our procedures, should be due this Friday, which means we have to have the answers and the staff report crafted in the next 3 days. And that may be tight to get it to you in 2 weeks to meet that and do a due diligence. So 1 month would be more realistic to actually do due diligence, reach out to the business owners. But certainly if you want to see it back in 2 weeks, it will be tight for us to be able to achieve that. But on the second issue, I would recommend you open the hearing and continue the hearing to whatever date specific that would be.
And let me just ask, you're suggesting, I think the 18th, is that right? October 18th, is that correct?
It is. I mean, if the only outstanding issue is to get as firm as we can, a response from restaurants, I think we do everything we can. I think staff would prefer to keep this moving, because once it backs into mid-October, then you back up application dates. So we would, if that's the only thing the council is looking for, continue the entire item 2 weeks, and we'll provide you everything we can on commitments from the restaurants in that report. And everything else, you have all the same ordinances before you, but that would be the missing piece to provide in a report that comes back to you in 2 weeks.
I'm a little confused here because I heard 2 different things here. Maybe I misunderstood. You're saying come back in 2 weeks with feedback from the stakeholders, but I thought the city manager was saying that can't be done.
Well, I was questioning the staff whether or not they can get that feedback in the next few days from businesses. I'm hearing that they should have the ability to be able to do that, have those conversations. If they can do that, then we can meet the 2 weeks. So really have a short time, because we have less than a week to really gather that interest.
So if I may, I think what staff's saying is the staff report stays the staff report, and there would be a supplemental document prepared with the detailed information that answers the questions that have been raised.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And just to make sure I'm totally understanding,
Go ahead.
Could that supplemental item be a desk item that gives you a little more flexibility?
If needed. Yeah. I mean, again, we're focusing strictly on outreach, feedback from stakeholders. So you have that information before you make a decision. That is strictly the item we will focus on, and make it into the packet or make it in as a desk item. We want you to have that information.
Well, if that's an option, and
So do we have a majority here want to continue this to 10/4, October 4th?
Oh, I had comment.
Please. That's what I want to see. I think
Yeah.
going around and around.
The deadline, from what I understand, was our own made deadline, because the comments were it's best to work during the winter. And so we gave the October deadline for the applications because of the time period. So for me, if we come back in 2 weeks, we extend the turn-in date by 2 weeks and then the start of construction. And that may give the temporary people the extra 2 weeks, but we kind of fabricated the deadline from what my memory is. And I would say, yes, let's come back and the next council agenda, and the desk item idea is good, as long as that's legally what we could do.
So do
But
we
what
need
design are we going to show people is what I think.
We need then a motion to continue this to October.
We should
14th.
reopen the public hearing because we already opened and closed it. We could just reopen
so
and then
reopen.
entertain a motion to continue the hearing to October 4th.
But open the public hearing.
Correct.
So reopen the public hearing right now first. Okay, so we'll open the public hearing and now we'll entertain a motion.
I would make a motion that we continue this item until the October 4th meeting.
Second.
So motion by Councilmember Gibbons, second by Councilwoman Landry. Can we have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Givens,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez,
I'm sorry. We have-
I just want
All
to
right.
clarify that the purpose of continuing it is to get information from the business owners as to their level of commitment. And nothing else is changing from this existing report. It's just the missing component of the level of commitment from the restaurants. Is that?
That is staff's understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilwoman Landry,
If Ann clarified something, does that mean the design won't change before because we've all, I mean, especially some of us have made very specific design comments. And so if it is as is, then the no revisions come back to us.
So I could say it this way. The research and additional information solely to stakeholder engagement to provide that to you. At that meeting in 2 weeks, if the council wants to make a decision on the design, you can
Right.
still make that decision in 2 weeks.
Okay, back to roll call.
Councilwoman Landry.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bybee.
Aye.
Mayor Resnick.
Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rob. We move to new business item 11, approval of the purchase of the NeoGov Human Resources Information System, HRIS, and payroll platform through a cooperative purchasing agreement with the SHI International Corp. and National Association of State Procurement Officials, NASPO, dispensing of bidding requirements as specified in Campbell Municipal Code Section 3.20.0306 and associated budget adjustment. Presenter is Cecil Lawson.
Yeah. Good
Thank
evening,
you,
Mayor
Cecil.
and City Councils. I'm Cecil Lawson, your IT manager. I have a few slides here to really bring out the salient point of how we made the decision, where we are now, where we're trying to move to, and the process by which we went through to select a vendor. Let me take you to the first page.
Can you put the microphone up or get closer to it?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
All right. The process of selecting an HRIS system, Human Resource Information System / payroll system, really started because we were looking at our finance system. The finance system is, from my reckoning, about 25 years old. It went through 3 acquisitions, and from 2015 on, it's been somewhat of a dead product, which means that the vendor doesn't update the functionality to adhere to technological changes. The finance system does have a payroll component of entry. However, we cannot use that component because the underlying products from Microsoft are no longer supported. In fact, one doesn't exist anymore. This sort of opened up the discussion as to how to do payroll and also HRIS opportunities or operational efficiencies that are brought in by human resource information systems. We don't have an HRIS system currently. What we do have are processes. Those processes rely on documents and disparate systems. And so whenever you inject people into a process with different types of formats of data, you inject different inconsistencies within that process. One thing that information systems do very well is to repeat a process pretty consistently. So we were really forced for obsolescence. And one of the things I wanted to bring out is after our March meeting with the finance director, the HR manager, the assistant city manager, and the city manager, I decided, as I always do, to write an RFP. That's what I always do. Whether I use that RFP from the beginning to the end, depends on the most efficient purchasing vehicle. The first thing we did is there are hundreds of products. So we had to segment those products into something that fit our needs after we defined specifically what our needs were. And also look at products that are specific to municipalities. There is a difference between private industry and government entities with regards to HRIS systems and finance or payroll systems. I also look at Gartner's Magic Quadrant. And the reason why I do that is I like to look at their reports to understand what the future holds. One of the restrictions I've always done whenever I purchase a technology is to ensure that that technology is cloud-based. And the reason for that is because the operating costs of said systems are much lower over the useful life of the product. Moreover, the product itself is future-proof, which means that it's going to continually update and won't leave us like we have our current finance system in the world of 2015 technology. So we sort of bake that into the process. I do a couple of other things that I wanted to touch on. I talk to my peers in other cities. We have a group of 8 peers, including the CIO of San Jose and other cities that are about our size. And I run these ideas past them. We also have an organization called MISAC, which is sort of a regional organization of technologists for municipalities. And I always look at their boards for information and pose questions regarding specific products and industries and so forth. So we're trying to get a reality check as before we move on any product. The competitive review involved narrowing down the large breadth of products down to 3 specific products. So we brought those products in and did the usual vendor presentations with questions and answers. I'm very specific when I write an RFP and when I have questions and answers with regards to the underlying technology and the evolution of the technology. One thing I don't want to experience here with any technology is a roadmap that ends and we're forced to replace that technology. So we're looking at companies that are robust. We're looking at companies that have a track record. We're also looking at organizations that within organizations our size and our municipalities have used the product successfully over a period of time. The last part is due diligence. Due diligence is where we call up people, organizations that have used the product to see what their experiences were and to compare that with our goals and match those up with their results. The RFQ, I'll have our finance director or HR manager speak to any questions after this. The RFP versus NASPO, which is a consortium of an organization that basically kind of a wholesaler, reduces the costs by collaboration, is an efficient vehicle, but it doesn't remove the need for us to go through the vetting process of the technology. SHI, in this particular example, SHI International is a reseller of NeoGov and a reseller that worked with NASPO in order to provide that discount for those that are interested. The implementation costs are $328,567. That does not include another $75,000 to supplement staff as we go through this process. The deployment time is about 3 to 6 months for this technology. I'm going to show you a chart to show you the impact, give you an idea of the areas of impact of this technology on our operations. In human resources, it's going to automate the recruitment of employees, onboarding and offboarding, which is kind of important with regards to allocation of resources in IT as people come into the organization and are set up to have the best day of their lives, hopefully, or one of the best days of their lives on their first day of employment here. And also offboarding as we start reallocating resources for other reasons. Training, personnel development, and performance management are all built in. Again, this is automated. So this is the system is taking over for the notifications and the management of this information. In the payroll area, we automate the tax process, the FTE tracking, which is of course important. Time and attendance is automated, which means that the process of time card entry and approval will be done using, like our other tools, Office 365, using the internet. and of course, an employee portal to make it totally convenient for employees to fill in that information, verify, and approve. Most importantly, that information goes directly into an automated system. Of course, can lead that automated system into another automated system without having keyed entry, at least long-term, of that information. Compliance is another important area, which is taxation, FSLA, the general ledger, which ultimately this will go into, online pay stubs, which are accessible by employees, as we go forward, taxable fringe benefits, and imputed income is also another compliance benefit. And of course, the area I focus on along with our team is the internet cloud, making sure that this again is future-proof. It is a pure software as a service. A lot of vendors of those hundreds that are out there will tell you that it's software as a service, but they're in fact a hybrid, which means that the overall cost will be much more for the city, and we wanted to avoid that. Interface compliance, which means when we purchase this product and ultimately replace our finance system, that the interface, the movement of data in the workflow process will be fluid. The way we do that is changing the industry using the cloud, and also a company up the street in San Francisco called Salesforce.com that created the platforms of interchange of information, which means that I have now standards by which I can ask our vendors to adhere to, so no one is writing a new interface and there's no incompatibility between these systems, at least as we add on to these systems. Again, future proof. I also use a term called air gap, which means that we are protecting our core infrastructure here at the city by using more and more of the cloud. In other words, if those cloud services do become compromised for whatever reason, we do have some of the rules regarding how they store their information, the transport of data on public networks. They're highly secure. But if it was compromised, it doesn't compromise our core infrastructure here. That's called air gapping. It's one of our strategies to protect our core infrastructure and technology and data here at the city. Okay, that's the presentation. The last page, of course, is the recommendation, which you have in your packets, and staff is available for questions if you have them.
Thank you very much. Questions for staff? Councilmember Gibbons?
I have to pull it up. So yes, thank you very much, Cecil. The presentation is helpful in addition to the staff report, and I'm supportive of this program. Council's been talking about the need for these all the way along, so that's fine. I have two questions that are unclear. One is the way I was reading it, it sounded like ultimately we need to spend $2 to $5 million on a big, robust system. And now you're asking us for $360,000. So I'm trying to understand, given your explanation now and what's in the staff report, are you seriously thinking that we need to do the $2 to $5 million down the road? I don't want to throw good money after bad. That's what I'm looking for.
I have our finance director answer part of that question, but this won't be replicated by the acquisition of finance systems. Many of the systems now are not monolithic. Think IBM, think SAP, think Oracle.
Yeah.
It's a very different world now, which means it's plug and play. So these pieces are puzzle pieces that tightly fit as far as their ability to transfer information. So whatever we purchase now does not have to be replicated as we look at a finance system and the modules involved in those finance systems.
So the statement in here that says, and it may be the anachronisms that get me confused, it says that we'll need a $2 to $5 million system down the line is for a system in addition to this, and this would plug into that system, not be replaced by.
The functionality that we're asking for tonight will not be replaced by a new finance system.
Okay. All right. So that was understanding the nomenclature. And then the second question is, I didn't understand. You're asking in the motion and it says $368,000 or whatever, yet the finance budget adjustment is only for 1 year. How can we make a motion for $365,000 yet only transfer this much? I know it's 1 year, but we're making a motion for a larger amount. So I don't understand that. Short, sweet and simple.
Okay, so in terms of the total of 3-year the 3-year cost of the purchase, it's about it's about 120. Okay, under the under the current year, year one, the first year, the first year cost of the program, it can be covered by the amount in the
right.
current budget. For years 2 and 3, it's between 80 to 80 to 100 per year about, and so any additional amounts in years 2 and 3, although you would be okaying the total 3-year cost of the contract and the purchase, for any expenses that occur in years 2 and 3, they would then go into the budgets for FY20, FY24, and FY25, and so they would then be approved when those come before the council. The current budget adjustment amount is only meant to pay for additional help in payroll and HR, so that our internal payroll and HR people are able to work upon the implementation, but also to ensure that our day-to-day work.
Right. So sorry to interrupt, Will, but all of that's explained quite well in the staff report. I get that. I just don't understand that. It seems like in the normal process, if we're doing a project and we know it's going to span over 3 years, we do a budget for all 3 years. It just struck me as odd that we're authorizing by motion the 328,000 amount for 3 years, but we aren't funding it. It just struck me as being odd. That's all.
Correct. And so if it were a CIP, you would also approve the full
For the full
budget
amount.
upfront. In this particular case, it could be a CIP, but we're not currently proposing it to be. The implementation itself is about a 3 to 6 month process. It would entirely be done in the current year. The 3-year contract, but also the cost that you would pay in years 1, 2, and 3 are to pay for the subscription
To pay for the
the cost
subscription, yeah.
as well in years 2 and 3.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Bybee?
Thank you. I want to thank you, Cecil, for the expanded information. I did have some questions earlier about the RFP process and the functionality and what we were going to be gaining by this. And so I appreciate the additional information, which I think is important for public information. I did have one question on the costing and the 3 years. And according to the report, it appears that at the end of the 3 years that we have options to extend the agreement or go with a different system or implement a full ERP. What do we have any idea at the end of the 3-year contract, what cost would be, or would they be similar to what we're paying? Does that?
I'm not sure if you, generally speaking, you would still be under NASPO. However, the cost increases beyond the 3 years usually have a COLA component or CPI component for increase in my experience as these contracts begin to renew. I would, depending on the success of the product, based on what we've heard so far, we would continue with that and then renew it at whatever the CPI. I think Will, Finance Director, may have asked about the cost, the normal cost increases, I think, in your discussion. So you might want to.
So if I understand, it would be if we were to, if the product is successful and the city is satisfied with it, we have an option then to continue the agreement, probably based on a CPI increase. And if it wasn't successful, we would then choose another option or go with a different system. Is that?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, no other questions. There you go. You dazzled us. Thank you so much. Let me open the public hearing, see if anybody in the public wishes to speak on this item. I don't see anybody online. Madam Clerk, anybody in the chamber? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for discussion and or a motion. Councilwoman Landry.
Yeah, thanks. As usual, Cecil, you've done a great job, a lot of research. Thank you, Will and Jenny. I support this, and if our software is from 2015, it's about time that we do this.
Councilmember Lopez?
Yeah, very similar comments. Excellent presentation report. Thank you, Cecil, Will, and Jenny for this now, but also the implementation, which I know is going to be really significant, but long overdue. It's incredible, yeah, just to hear the state of where our system was. So really glad that we're doing this. It's going to have huge benefits.
Agreed. Is there a motion?
I'm prepared to make a motion that the city council adopt a resolution 1, authorizing the city manager to execute a 3-year agreement with SHI International Corporation using pricing and items specific through a competitively bid award from the National Association of State Procurement Officials to purchase the NeoGov Human Resources Information System and the payroll platform for an amount not to exceed $328,567 and to dispense with bidding requirements as authorized in the Campbell Municipal Code Section 3.20.030, subparagraph 6, and 2, authorize the finance director to implement an associated budget adjustment for the implementation support services.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Gibbons, second by Vice Mayor Bybee. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gibbons.
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilwoman Landry.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bybee.
Aye.
Mayor Resnick.
Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cecil, Jenny, and Will. Appreciate it. This is a long time coming. Move to unfinished. You want to take a 10-minute break? If you like. We'll shoot for 10. Well, I have a feeling we never get there. Let's say 10 minutes, 5 after 10 minutes. Take that break. Thank you.
Leftover cookie.
Another round?
Okay, we're back for unfinished business item 12, Oktoberfest fee waiver request. And our presenter is Angelique Gaeta. Go on down.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. Angelique Gaeta, Assistant City Manager for Campbell. So item 12 is a recommendation by the staff for the City Council to adopt a resolution approving a 50% reduction in the fees associated with the Chamber's October 2022, Oktoberfest, sorry, getting them mixed up. So this item is actually a continuation of what began a couple of weeks ago, where the chamber requested a special events permit be approved, which the council did. And then the chamber also requested a reduction of the fees by 50% or 25,000, whichever was less. The council decided to approve a 25% reduction in fees, provided that the chamber worked with the city to come to agreement on paying off an unpaid balance related to the Boogie 2022 event. That was about 48,000, and also that the chamber meet with the city and provide financial documentation supporting a 25% fee reduction. The council then offered that the chamber could come back at tonight's meeting and finish their request or respond to the request for the 50% reduction. So on September 12th, the city manager's office, our finance department, and the chamber met. We were able to come to agreement on the outstanding balance of 48,000 and effectively amended a current promissory note by extending the term and adding that balance. So over a period of 19 months added to the end of that existing promissory note. Both parties were agreeable to that. The payments stayed the same. It was just extending the term of what already existed. So the chamber has signed that, and that is now in effect. And then we sat down and discussed the financial support for the 25% reduction in fees. Per our fee waiver request policy, the chamber provided us with not only a look into the future of what they expected to net in profits from the Oktoberfest, but also what they netted last year for the same event. And then they actually shared with us their financials dating back to 2017. They also shared with us their profit and loss sheets, specifically around COVID period of time where they experienced a clear loss, and then shared with us the steps they were taking to essentially stay afloat and cover their operational costs. So with that, we felt confident that they had met the requirements for the 25% reduction in fees. And we also felt that we could make a recommendation for a further reduction of 50% total reduction on the fees. So right now, the estimated fees for the Oktoberfest are about 65,000. So it would be a 50% reduction in those fees. And with that, I'm happy to entertain questions. Mr. Johnson, the executive director for the chamber, is here as well to answer any questions the council might have.
Okay, and just to clarify, we are talking specifically about a 25% additional for Oktoberfest 22. That's it. We discussed a bunch of other things last time, but that is all that's on the table tonight.
Correct.
Okay. Are there questions for staff? Oh, guess we all got it. Thank you very much. Let me then open the public hearing, ask if anybody in the public wishes to speak on this item. And I'm guessing Ken Johnson's going to come on down. Make it worth the wait to sit here all night.
That's always worth the wait. If I were on Zoom, I'd be asleep probably right now. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you very much. Got a lot of great feedback from you at the last meeting about what information you didn't have. And so I had an opportunity to meet with city manager, the assistant city manager, and the finance director to really just go over what we've been through since 2017 and show the picture of how it's been going forward and what the implementation of the full cost recovery model, in addition to additional staffing, has done to us. So all we're asking for tonight is a 50% on Oktoberfest. What I'd like to do is to come back after that to do a review with you about how we did. We'll have one more data point about how we are at a festival, and then to share in as much detail as I need to with the city manager and the finance director again of where we are, and to try to come up with a model going forward. That the intent for me since 2019 has been trying to just get to a budget number that I can work with, that's sort of a set known fee that allows us to continue to do what we do in the community here with the festivals. So happy to answer any questions.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wants to comment on this? I don't see anybody online. So we'll close public hearing, bring it back to council for a discussion or a motion. Councilmember Gibbons, Councilmember Lopez.
I'll just state for the record, I did meet with Ken Johnson ahead of time. It was helpful to answer some questions about the numbers in more detail, but appreciate Ken and staff's work on this to address some of the concerns that came up last time.
Okay, Councilmember Gibbons.
Thank you. I would just, I was going to offer to make a motion preceded by a comment, which is that I think the chamber and the city have worked remarkably well during a terribly difficult time. And as mayor last year, I was very appreciative of the level of effort that the chamber and the CEO put into helping our community stay financially alive, our businesses in action. And the information provided for this decision of reduction in fee was indicative of the impact that COVID had on their organization as well. So I'm very pleased to support this. And I would make a motion that the city council adopt a resolution approving a 50% reduction in fees charged to the Campbell Chamber of Commerce for the 2022 Oktoberfest.
Second. Oh, I did.
Motion
Okay.
by Councilmember Gibbons, second, I believe, from Councilwoman Landry. I think so. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gibbons.
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilwoman Landry.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bybee.
Aye.
Mayor Resnikoff.
Aye. So that passes. Thank you. And thank you, Ken, for hanging in and for helping us on the earlier issue as well. Move to item 13. Receive a progress update on the residential design standards work plan effort and preparation of an initial draft of the multifamily residential development and design standards. And our presenter is.
Can I point out something real quick?
Certainly.
The camera is not, Cecil, the camera is not showing who's speaking at any given time. And I don't know if it's because the green light's not going on, but for the recording, anybody who spoke does not show up.
It did earlier, actually.
The last two people
Okay.
didn't show up. And I know we're going to have speakers. That's why I brought it up.
Thank you.
All right, I'll go ahead and start. Rob Easter again, Community Development Director. Two pieces of good news. I think this is your last business item tonight, number one. Number two, it's mostly informational. So there's a very fast pace we're taking on the objective standards, design standards. We're using this opportunity just to check in with you on our outreach, what we've heard, and the process we're using so far to develop the standards. So no actions before you tonight, no heavy lifting. It's mostly informational, but as always, we always appreciate council feedback. Introductions tonight, in addition to myself, Stephen Rose, Senior Planner, Tracy Tam, Associate Planner, are going to present parts of this. We also have the design team Opticos that will present parts of this. We'll try to be very pithy and very fast, but of course can stop for questions. Just a quick overview of the structure is to, we'll go ahead and present first what we've heard on the outreach. The important part of this was going out to the community, getting as much feedback as we could on what they think about different types of residential buildings, what they like and what they don't like, and what they think fits into Campbell, and using that feedback to start to craft these residential design standards. So we wanted to present that to you tonight. That's one. After that, we do just a quick stop and check in if you had questions. After that, we're going to give it over to OPTCOS. They're just going to walk you through some of the methodologies they're using on how they're preparing the standards. And then we'll finish up just with the schedule going forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Stephen Rose to present.
All right. Thank you. Good evening. So since we had our kickoff meeting last month, we've been busy. In addition to meeting with the Planning Commission, giving kind of a similar kickoff meeting, we have done some very broad community outreach about the update process. We have a dedicated website, an opt-in list, email blast. In addition to that, we've held both a community meeting, just pretty much providing an update on this, as well as a developers working group meeting. And as well as we've released a survey, which I think as of the report was up to around 60 some odd results, and now we're closer to 70. We're going to continue to push through the survey and try to get more results that way. But the purpose of these couple slides is just to summarize at a very high level some of the feedback we've received to date from the community and stakeholder meetings so far. First and foremost, we've been encouraged to look at having a little bit more varied and pitched roofs, the development and design of our new objective standards. We're also looking to discourage projects with exclusively flat roofs. We've heard from the community a great deal of support for more of a Spanish architectural style, particularly in the Prune Yard and along Winchester Boulevard near the community center. And we've also heard broad support for what we're describing as a cannery architectural style, like in the downtown. An example of that's here on screen. Just a few additional community stakeholder feedback comments we've heard is that we'd like to explore having specific parking standards by use. The example that was given was a senior care facility or senior living facility. The observation, this is made by one of our affordable housing developers, was that when these projects are first built, the first couple of years, there's a great demand on parking facilities. But as people age and they age in place, the parking demand diminishes over time. So to be a little bit more creative, look towards programs such as like a valet parking program for this first couple of years, and then allow that parking standard to kind of wane over time. Other things which we'll be looking at is providing flexibility between private and common open space areas, as well as avoiding being too prescriptive in design. Allowing for some variety was just an overarching comment which we'd heard through all those meetings to date. So in addition to asking and soliciting public feedback on architectural design and particular buildings that they preferred or preferred more, preferred less, we also solicited broad community feedback on particular areas of the community or area of Campbell, where to try to solicit, does Campbell have a distinct architectural style that we should be preserving or promoting as part of this update process? And if so, where does that occur? And what area should we be cognizant of? And really what we'd heard was within Winchester, along Winchester and Prune Yard again, there was this preference for Spanish style architecture. Again, in the downtown, the cannery architectural style. In the San Tomas neighborhood, we'd heard just general feedback about a preference for traditional, such as ranch or craftsman style architecture. Again, going back to the survey, again, in the report where I think it's 66 or so responses were received. Just on the screen, you're seeing the distribution of responses. The majority of people who took it were over 20 years of age. Over 51% of them were over 55 years old. Or I'm sorry, 57% were Campbell residents and 51% were over 55 years old. And just as examples of images which we showed to the community, the image you're seeing in the top right, which is this kind of Spanish fourplex, was the most preferred image we'd shown out of all of the options. And the least preferred is the fourplex you're seeing in the bottom right. This is an additional takeaway from all the community outreach support, or all the community outreach and feedback we've received, as well as from developers. It's our anticipation that from developers in particular, that this is going to be it's a paradigm shift, what we're doing. We're changing a lot of standards very quickly. And as a result of that, it's our anticipation that the changes to site layout and architectural design that are going to be presented by this update are more likely not going to be a little bit less profitable than what our development community is used to building or may prefer building. So it's just giving us a early heads up. This is the type of feedback which we might be receiving a little bit further down the process than where we're at today. And it also may not allow for the types of buildings or projects that we've recently approved in the city, unless we specifically go out of our way to build in or modify our standards to facilitate certain projects. So we're going to be evaluating both elements as we kind of advance. I'm not trying to, put a pin in it and say that, well, that's the way it's going to be. We're going to probably evaluate recently approved buildings and projects as part of this process and determine, can it be built? Can this particular project be built? And if not, making sure that we're making it very clear what the trade-offs and why we're not allowing this particular projects to be built in favor of the adoption of these new standards. And with that, I was going to stop briefly for questions. If not, we go ahead and proceed. Opticus has a presentation, which is going to go into their analytical approach.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Questions?
I need some help with what you just said. What's coming next? I'm trying to figure out when to ask my questions. What's coming next?
So Opticus is going to give a detailed walkthrough of their analytical approach to all of our. They've really been digesting the city's zoning ordinance, area plans, looking at height, upcoming densities as part of the general plan. They're going to give you a walkthrough of that analysis to date and how that's going to be informing our update.
I think I'd be better off holding.
Okay. Any other questions? Nope.
All right. With that, I'll kick it back to you, Stefan, if you're online.
Thank you, Stephen.
You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. Can you hear me, Stephen?
We can.
Yep, we can hear you. Fine. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Good evening, Mayor Resnikoff and City Council members. It's nice to see everyone again. We've been working very rapidly with staff, and so we appreciate this opportunity to give you an update tonight on what we've been working on. As Stephen mentioned, we've been doing quite a bit of analysis. We have been reviewing the existing zoning code, the work on the draft general plan land use map, as well as the development standards and guidance that are within the individual area plans within the city. And we've been compiling that and collating that with some analysis that we're doing of the existing built form and parcels within the areas of the city where the design standards will apply. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. As we're sort of looking at that, we also are sort of very aware of certain constraints that state law is providing with regards to the Housing Accountability Acts and limitations that we have in terms of modifying the existing zoning envelope when we write these design standards under SB 330, as well as sort of the constraints of the general plan EAR and the amounts of development that EAR sort of anticipates. Next slide, please. So then following slides are some examples. There's sort of more information in the staff report that all of you provided. Some examples of sort of what we've been working on. This first one are some excerpts from an analysis of the zoning envelope that we did in the applicable residential and mixed use zoning districts. And we looked carefully at the zoning envelope that the current zoning standards allow. And we're looking at sort of how that actually might contrast with what the objective design standards might apply to these sites. This is a really useful activity for us because it starts to uncover some of the things that the standards may currently not regulate or sort of not encourage that will need to be regulated in the future. Particularly in situations where we won't be able to rely on discretionary review as much. And your packet tonight sort of included a sort of more comprehensive look at how we've been understanding this information across the different districts in the city. Next slide, please. We've also sort of been looking at some of the sort of detailed or things that will sort of result from the application of supplemental design standards. And one of the key features that we're concerned with is illustrated here. That is sort of frontage, how buildings transition from the back of the sidewalk or the public realm to the front face of the building. And this is sort of a really important factor for how buildings relate to the streetscape. It's an important sort of urban design component of design. So we've been looking at different kinds of frontage types and how they are present within existing zone districts in the city, either where we sort of see them frequently or where we actually might see them present in limited forms. And this information is really useful for us because we can focus on writing standards that are applicable within these zone districts in the future that can encourage and continue these frontage patterns in sort of a site-specific way. And this is sort of one of the ways how we're sort of using analysis to ensure that the design standards respond to many of the sort of existing patterns that we see in Campbell neighborhoods that actually make them distinct. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to sort of share two maps with you that sort of were also in the packet that are sort of primary drivers for informing the design standards. This first one is sort of informing how tall buildings are expected to be within the applicable zone districts. And this information is taken from the development standards in the existing zone districts. And you can see how those sort of apply within the city. There are some additional areas on this map that are not present that are demonstrated by that are currently zoned planned development. And those also will have the need to sort of define zone standards in those areas where objective design standards will be applicable in the future. But one of the things that we want to make sure of is the design standards can be sort of calibrated to these existing heights, because of course under SB 330, it will be important for us to maintain these heights for residential zone districts within the city. And the next slide is sort of another element that we sort of need to maintain, which are the densities that are being set by the draft general plan. And you can see those sort of mapped here, ranging from sort of the lowest intensity applied to the single family neighborhoods up to some areas where achieve 60 to 75 dwelling units to the acre. What we want to make sure of here is that the design standards are producing an outcome that can sort of meet these densities and where we can ensure that an outcome can actually emerge from the standards. And one of the ways that we'll be testing both the height and the density is through the test fit process, which we had a chance to speak with you about when we met previously, and have provided some additional information on that also in the staff report. Next slide, please. And then finally, sort of one of the things that we are sort of looking carefully on is sort of understanding that applying design standards in Campbell, it's not really sort of a one size fits all process. There are parts of the city that we would refer to as walkable, meaning that they can actually support development patterns within walkable environments. These might be environments where you are within walking distance of transit. They also might be environments where you actually can easily access services like grocery stores, for example, within a 5 to 10 minute walk of your resident. We also look carefully sort of at the development patterns, places like the neighborhoods immediately adjacent to downtown that have a fine-grained network of streets and blocks. It's much easier to sort of provide a walkable environment there than it may be in other parts of the city where that are more sort of auto-oriented or auto-dependent. And one of the reasons why we want to contrast these two areas is because they might form a basis for how we sort of modify development standards to respond to these different contexts. One thing to think about where this actually might be possible is how we're applying parking standards. Parking standards might reasonably be lower for areas of the city that are walkable and support development in walkable patterns, but they also might need to be higher in areas where future residents simply may not have as many transit or multimodal choices to make when they're living in those areas. So it's important for us to sort of map these areas in order to be able to calibrate the standards appropriately moving forward. Next slide, please. I'm going to pass it back to Stephen to talk about the schedule and look forward to any questions or comments you might have on the content we've prepared to date. Thank you.
Hi, members of the City Council. Tracy Tam, Associate Planner, just going to be talking about project schedule and next steps.
Can you lean in close, please, to the mic just so we can hear you better?
Oh, is that better?
Yeah.
I can't tell with the mask. I can't
Yeah, I
see.
know. So that's why if you're closer, it'll help. Thank you.
Okay. So talking about what's done and what's to come. So you'll notice on the schedule that in the August-September timeframe, we did our first series of community outreach. So you can kind of touched on it earlier. And we are preparing to gear up for our second series of community outreach in the October timeframe. We will be meeting to talk about, in the second series, we will be meeting to talk about the initial standards. Now, this is distinct from the admin standards because we're still developing the standards, but at least this is where we'll get feedback on some of the initial concepts that we're drafting to be finalized in preparation for the admin draft that we're anticipating to go to the Planning Commission, City Council, and then November, December timeframe of this year, with adoption in early next year. And as sort of a look ahead, we won't be having a joint study session with the Planning Commission, City Council in late October, early November. And really, this is sort of a new meeting, but as we were drafting the staff memorandum for today's meeting, we realized it would be really beneficial to sort of go over the new form-based code method, since it is a pretty different shift in how we're applying these type of standards. And so at this meeting, we're going to be taking a look at the document structure, framework, and the terminology, just to get folks familiar with the concepts and what's going to be coming in the November, December timeframe. And then we're also going to be talking about how this new form-based approach is going to be integrating with existing policies like the area plans and existing regulations like our ordinances. And so, yeah, just a note that we are proposing this to be a joint Planning Commission City Council study session. And with that, I think that concludes staff's presentation.
That's it.
I'm just checking. You said for more questions?
No, there's nothing more. And the one thing on the note, we realized as we got deeper into the standards that the approach Opticos takes to this is very different from normal zoning ordinances. And there's a glossary and approach that's different from a normal approach to zoning ordinances. So again, the thought behind the study session is strictly educational. But before the Planning Commission Council starts to roll up their sleeves and get into the standards, it is good to just get a framework of the different approach and the terminology. So that was the thought, just to educate both of you together. You're not making decisions, and the thought is, since we're educating, both Planning Commission Council needs to review it. We did this once before the housing on, just provide an educational session for you in that time frame.
So I would just say before we open, I need to open public hearing, but first let me see if there were any more questions. And if I'm not mistaken, is this Tracy's first time presenting to us? I think. Was it? So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Welcome. Councilmember Lopez.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy, and thank you, staff, for the presentation. I'm I'm looking at the calendar, the timeline, and I'm just trying to understand. So and maybe helpful to, thank you, to pull it back up, although I have it here. So I'm just trying to understand the next touch points that the council has. So I see the meeting that's been added. It looks like the next one, if I'm reading this correctly, is the initial draft of standards, end of September, early October. Is that tonight? Even though it says you are here?
No, after this, we actually, Opticos will roll out the initial standards. Tonight was just a touch point on here's where we're at in the process. Here's what we heard from the community. Here's what's going into those standards. The initial draft, we will take out and do outreach with to both the community, developer community, and start to get feedback. It's after that process that we'll bring it back to the council. So those points you see there are initial draft standards and the roundtable meeting, community meeting, those
That's
are
the
just
process itself, not
exactly.
So then could you clarify for me around, so what would be the next, how many more touch points can we expect, I guess? Apart from the one that's specifically mentioned here.
Sure. Your first bite at the apple will be in that November timeframe. So the initial standards have gone out, developers have provided feedback, public has. We're doing some shifting probably to those. We're bringing those to you in November to provide feedback on. And again, the key point on that educational meeting was to have that just prior to that meeting, so you get educated on the approach and the terminologies and so forth.
And then presumably after the final draft would be
Right.
That'd be the second one.
Final draft doesn't come in until early next year. And again, our goal, if you're ready, so it's general plan, housing element, and objective design standards all together. We haven't shown you the housing element schedule. We didn't want you to fall out of your seats. But as we get into November, December timeframe, we'll get into some heavy decision making on the housing element too. So just know you'll have a touch point on the objective standards, early input that goes off, final standards come back later. But there's some heavy decision making before the council in that same time frame for the housing element.
Okay, great. That's really helpful and frankly makes me feel a lot better than I was initially reading this with the timeline. So thank you.
Councilmember Gibbons.
Thanks. One question here, and then I will ask other questions in my comment section. I think it's probably easier to follow my thought process. In the staff report, there was the infinitesimally small lines of feedback from the survey. Was that all of the feedback from the survey, or was that?
Yeah, so what you saw the first couple slides at the first couple pages, I believe it was a summary of the feedback by topic area, but that was a summation of all the comments that were written by topic.
It's in the appendices is what I was looking at.
Correct. So what Opticos did was they took all the survey responses.
That is a summary.
That is a summary.
Okay, that was my
Well,
question.
I think it's direct comments, but they're organized in a way that's by theme,
But it
by
is all
topic.
the comments.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, so then I will ask, I'll have comment afterwards. Thank you. I just wanted to understand what I was looking at.
Yeah, can you go back a couple to where you show, keep going. One where it said what style of architecture? There were three, yeah. Okay, so the Santa Moss neighborhood is the only one that's going to have a theme of the residential neighborhoods?
Again, we are going to be looking at policy language that's contained in each of the city's area plans for guidance, but just based on community and public feedback, this is what we had heard.
This is just their preferences. Because like the Campbell Village has a neighborhood plan and there's nothing shown here as a theme for that area.
Yeah, correct. So I wouldn't say there's an architectural style defined for Campbell Village, but even within the area plan itself. But what I would say is that what this is summarizing, it's not trying to articulate what our area plans are saying. It's just saying purely based on public feedback, community engagement, as a result of those of the community meetings we've held and the survey taking the date, this is what we've heard from the public.
Okay. Next question, on some of these, they show a wall going up and then a slope and then the roof. Is that going to slope like that, or like that one right there? Or is it a step back? Like at 35 feet, you step back 5 feet, just go, because all your images are flat walls going up.
And what I'd emphasize is, so what these are attempting to illustrate is our existing zoning envelope. So what our current standards would allow in terms of a building placement on a lot. So there are limitations. It's somewhat difficult to read the exhibits, but they do show minimum setbacks, front, side, rear setbacks, lot coverage, maximum floor area ratio in terms of overall volume and height.
Right.
Just
but
trying
if-
to,
I'm looking at this graphic on the top and it goes up, it slopes, and then it goes flat. Isn't that a step back versus a slope, or is that
What
just
it's-
the envelope?
yeah, what this exhibit is trying to illustrate is the relationship between building wall height and setback. So there's a relationship between the height of a building wall and its required distance to a property line. So it's showing kind of like an angled view. It's not
Right.
trying to show a step back or first to second story building height relationship, nor is it trying to show what our future form-based
Okay.
code standards will have. It's trying to articulate what we already have in the books today.
Okay, and how did you define the styles?
So that's
The
going to be,
architectural
that's
styles.
definitely more to come. So one of the things we're going to be working on is taking the account public feedback. Based on that, we're going to develop a palette of architectural styles, which the city council might consider.
I don't think you understood my question. How did you define that style? Because I'm looking at Spanish style and I'm looking at them saying the prune yard is Spanish style. But that's not the graphic. The graphic is white stucco with the red tile roof, and prune yard is more of a veranda style with the wide porticos and the big heavy wood. So to me, defining what the style really is, because Spanish style does not fit the prune yard. Maybe the tile roof, but not the white stucco look. And then there's nothing like modern revival or any of them kind of trends right now that are in design, like giving people an option. What do you think of modern revival? And that in my Campbell Village neighborhood, that's what's happening to all the houses right now. So I'm just, where's the definition of these architectural styles?
What I'd broadly say is we're taking images that we're trying to avoid terminology and specific definitions that say architectural styles that the general public wouldn't resonate as well with. We're trying to take images, broad pictures like that Spanish imagery that we saw earlier, that fourplex. Take that, and what we're going to be doing is reverse engineering that image. Okay, the community likes that image. What does that image mean? What does it have? What are the elements that make that type of building unique and special, and why people were more supportive of it than they weren't? And we're trying to develop a palette of, say, architectural details, which will be included later as part of our standards that would be defining, okay, it's supposed to be, hand troweled, or not, or, rustic, stucco. We'll define the, all those types of details. We'll go into that level of detail a little bit later in the update process. Right now, we're just trying to get broad community impressions. This is generally what we've heard, and trying to summarize that.
Because the one slide that has the 3 styles is saying the prune yard is Spanish style. And I'm telling you, that's not like indicative of what white stucco and red tile roofs. So if you say, I want to make prune yard Spanish style, well, that's not what it is now. So that's why where is it defined more than just this one graphic that shows a fourplex with white stucco on the roof? And that's not I'm just picking on that one to have questions or to raise the point of where is the definition of the style? So I'll leave it at that.
Any other questions? Seeing no questions, open a public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak on this item? Bishop, you're welcome to come on up, and thanks for hanging in.
This is what I was here for. Raja Palala, 1216 West Hacienda Avenue. Again, ton of appreciation for Director Eastwood and Senior Planner Stephen Rose. Never seen things moving so fast and efficiently, and with all best intentions. Couple of requests. I know this is just an update, but I keep repeating. Please don't restrict elevations to a particular style. Let there be diversity flourish. We don't want city to be looking either Spanish or Dutch or one. I don't think that's our goal. Please keep the option to allow modern designs within the framework of objective standards like break sight lines, things like that. Also, please encourage open terrace in mixed use projects to allow for the missing open spaces. Like open terrace will give space for air and light for people to go because they're not going to be much on the ground. And the request St. Thomas area neighborhood plan covers 1/3 of the city. 1/3 of the city cannot be called as neighborhood plan. St. Thomas plan need to be updated as part of this standards to remove restrictions on like roof structures. This was created like in 1993, where a lot of lots are like 10,000 square feet, 15,000, 20,000. That's too big for considering how much less housing we have. The maximum building height is restricted to 28 feet and 2.5 floors. This essentially prohibits creating of small lot, single family homes, like 2,000 square feet homes, which are the crux to address the missing middle category. Also, setbacks is irrelevant for access to buildings, as the ADU state law prohibits setbacks more than 4 feet. So we have to revisit the setbacks as part of the development standards. Architectural review is subjective, and since we are going towards objective standards, we should get rid of architectural reviews. Designs from 50 years old ago does not interest young demographic homeowners or buyers. So please leave room for modern and contemporary designs. As shown from the survey results, respondents, most of the respondents are 51 year plus. I'm almost done.
Please finish.
Yeah,
sure.
we are, we are not a Spanish settlement town with historic Spanish buildings. Neither we are a Dutch town or anything. So, allowing for diversity in elevations will be a great thing. Setting this style for the next 50 years and not the past 50. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to speak? Again, we have nobody online, I don't think. So we'll bring it back to the council for comments. Councilmember Gibbons.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Obviously, a tremendous amount of work and frankly dense. So it took me several reads to really kind of grasp what was going on. And I certainly understand this is a touch point, so I'm planning to give you feedback on each of the points of information, excuse me, that are in here. I would just offer that on the survey, I really thought the survey didn't accomplish what you wanted it to accomplish because the pictures were very, very hard for the public to understand. I mean, there was one picture of a house, a series of houses with massively long entrance stairs. Well, it was long entrance stairs because it was raised to have either units below or parking below. So I don't think people commented and understood. And when I read through all the summaries and all those lines, I see where staff could easily pick up on Mediterranean or style here and cannery style there. But I read it a little bit differently. There was a lot of comment about the eclectic nature of Campbell. We don't really have a character of buildings. We have a character of environment and history. And I just wanted to make sure that the consultants have read this book, because Campbell wasn't incorporated until 1956, right? And the
52.
It's 52. I was always getting 52 and 56 mixed up. The community center and across the street, the grammar school at Heritage Village now are wonderful architecture. But that was the architecture in 1930, the mid 1930s. It was done by Weeks, and the exact same buildings almost are all over the area. They're in very close to us in San Jose with the Hoover Middle School, and they're elsewhere. So that's not a Campbell style. That was the style of architecture schools by a famous architect who did schools in the 30s. So it's important not to overemphasize any heritage or tradition. It was just what it was. The cannery architecture was just there because Campbell didn't exist. It was basically 3 railroads, 3 canneries, and 3 banks. And when the city incorporated, it was basically to keep us out of San Jose. I mean, that was the big push. So, and then there's a history of what happened, and we didn't have a downtown, and there were issues of loop roads. The loop roads were created to get people through Campbell faster, and because there's only a couple ways to get through the city. And then the downtown was really created by the council in the late 80s and early 90s, the commitment with the redevelopment agency. There was a big push to make Kirkwood Plaza downtown Campbell. And it didn't happen because the council said, no, this is Campbell. So there's a tremendous amount of history of how Campbell became Campbell. It is very eclectic. It's always forward looking. So the examples in the pictures about flat roofs, they're awful examples. I gave, I won't take time now because of the lateness of the hour, I promise. But I did send staff some examples of really good architecture in Sunnyvale and in Mountain View with our flat roofs that have expression. So I think it's very important to look at the survey, not have individual comments add up to an assumption of Mediterranean, because that's the style that people were reacting to, because that was the pictures put there. The broader comment was really talking about Campbell being eclectic. And we got a really good comment from the public today. I think I probably won't be able to pull it up now that I want to, but there was a very good comment from the public about the fact that Campbell wants to look forward. It's a community of its time and place moving forward. It's not historical. Okay, we have great value with our history, but not that. So be careful with the survey. And I think Susan asked the definitions. I thought that was good. Okay, going quickly through the comment on zoning. Let's see. Okay. Your zoning envelope diagrams are tough to follow. I mean, I spent time and I understood them, as Councilwoman Landry just said, but it was very, very hard to follow it in the staff report because it was so small. So please be thoughtful of us trying to understand the material going forward. We've got tiny little screens. That's it. And when you expand it, you have to constantly move it around. It was awfully hard to read. The frontage analysis is a good example of what I was saying. You're talking about patterns. The patterns were developed over years. There were no design standards. There was no, the 2 examples you showed in the presentation tonight with the recessed entrance and the flat entrance, the flat facade. The flat facade was because it was a storefront, and that was with residences above. That was how you built it in the late 1930s, 40s kind of thing. So recognize that patterns may not be patterns in the way you appear to be using them and checking off on this box, on this frontage kind of thing. So I would offer that as a, come on. Okay, and the next one is existing height limit analysis. I understand why you did that. I do have some questions, but I'll ask staff later. Parking standards. Another thing, broad statement is Campbell is Campbell. We have in all of our work in these last few years on general plan and housing elements said Campbell is Campbell. Okay. Hard not to get caught up in, is it Mediterranean and is it cannery like? I get it. I get that. But Campbell is Campbell. It has to do with the spaces that are created, the public spaces, the spaces in between, the diversity. the fact that some buildings are tall, some buildings are short, some buildings are close to the street, some buildings are not close to the street. So there is Campbell being Campbell. And when you look at parking standards, Campbell, to compare Campbell to other surrounding cities, you have to look, our street structure is narrow. Okay, so be aware of the fact that we had, I mean, they were basically dirt roads that eventually got paved. The housing stock was cannery housing. So be thoughtful and don't over summarize that Campbell should be compared to the 5 surrounding cities. And the 5 surrounding cities should be compared to the Marin cluster of cities. We're all unique and different. And people come here and stay here and want to come here because of those uniquenesses. Don't give up our uniquenesses, but you have to figure out which ones they are. I'll just make a comment about the parking is, I know we all have to pay attention to state law. I certainly am as aware of that as anyone. They keep talking about viable public transit. I did a math, and the capacity of the light rail system in the peak hours is minuscule compared to the existing population we're going to add, never mind our total population. So to count on that, I live on a street where there's a school. I cannot get out of my driveway in the morning for half an hour or in the afternoon for half an hour because every parent drives their kids to school. That's not going to change. They're not going to let their kids walk to school. So there are going to be cars. And I know it's a challenge with state law, but be aware of that. And the last comments I have, I think, are on the test fit. It's unclear in your sample in the staff report, the summary numbers. It doesn't include the height. It doesn't include the lot size. And it doesn't include the impact of 50% density bonus, which you've mentioned in some of your other material. I think all of that needs to be incorporated so people really understand what these test fits are all about. And I'm going to be particularly fussy. I've mentioned this before. Councilwoman Landry and I both did. The height is really important because if you do the math based on the mix of use of unit types that you put in here, it dictates how many units per acre and how high the building's going to be. And I think I heard in the presentation that there's a real effort to respect the voter 75-foot height limit. The test fit needs to communicate how that's being respected and where it's at risk. Okay. And then the final thing I think I will talk about is you've given your examples, and I have no problem with the ones we've discussed before, but I would offer on the ones that you're adding. I think the 2 on Dillon are not necessary. I think they don't identify the critical situations. The critical situations that we have are where we're going to have 45 feet next to single family residences. We have that on Winchester, Hamilton, and Bascom. All 3 of those major arteries are going to have that juxtaposition. That's a better place to show a test fit, I think. The 2 Dillon ones are basically surrounded by other industrial service areas. So I don't think they accomplish what you want to do to help the community understand the real impact on our existing community by these changes. The one on Bud is problematic because it has a very narrow street in front of it, no parking on the street, and has high traffic. So, and it's going to get worse because of the development on Winchester. So I'm not sure that that's the best example. I can probably be more specific.
Can we close? I just want to bring some other people in.
Yeah.
Because it's getting very late.
I know. I'm literally on my last paragraph. Thank you. I did try. Okay. Now you'll leave my last thoughts. Okay. All right, so I've not lost my thought. Okay, those are the bulk of them.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Landry?
Yes, thank you. A lot of work. Been long time in coming. I do appreciate all the effort that's been put in, and although I can get very critical and critique down to the nuts and bolts, it's really for the betterment of what we're doing. And but I do appreciate the work effort and the amount of mapping about all the graphics. With that said, these, like right now, looking at this page, that yellow font on the orange, and especially on some of the tables, you cannot read. I mean, someone like me who needs glasses, or like I need a magnifier to figure out abbreviations. And we brought this up before when you were here, Optica was here the first time, is make it readable. Most people are reading it on an iPad or a cell phone or on the website, and a lot of white space and teeny fonts and a light font. Like this one has white fonts, yellow fonts, lots of extra space. And then the graphic is so small, you have to zoom in with the magnifying glass to read it. So very critical, but it's very important that these documents are readable as we move forward. Okay, enough said on that. And then I showed the maps problems. That's why I was late, was I was showing some of the map problems to prevent that from happening again. So I'm gonna get back onto this architectural style. We are eclectic. I don't think we want to say this neighborhood is ranch. Well, modern revival right now is a bigger deal with wider, flatter porticos, a door that has glass panes, horizontal. And so by presenting these images of these styles for people to pick, I don't know that the style or the image is really representation of how you describe. So that's why I was asking, where's the description of these styles? Like Eichler has a flat roof and you're saying no flat roofs. So it's kind of, to me, like, what is it we're really talking about? Okay, so that's enough on that. I had mentioned when I was over there talking to planning about I think it would be wonderful to have a map or a model where you actually show these heights. People are going to freak out when they see a 75-foot tall building next to their backyard, or even a 45-foot tall building back to their next yard. And they won't freak out till they start to build it and they see it going up. They're going to go, oh my God, I couldn't picture that. So if there could be some isometrics, perspectives, a model, I think would be wonderful, that shows where, just a block. I don't have to have any finials or just a block, because this is going to be 75 feet. This is going to, that to me would be a fabulous visual graphic that people can really understand. So if we can do that, that would be wonderful. Regarding parking, and the comment was made that senior housing right now, maybe they don't have enough cars, and then maybe later we can reduce parking. Well, I've mentioned a couple times, and I think Liz has also, is that you can design the building now with the first floor as a parking garage, but you keep the roof the height you would need to build out later. So you can get rid of the parking in 5-10 years, and now the space is usable and can become office or more residential. But this multi-using of these spaces is not anything I read anywhere. So I think having that ability to convert later, I think it would be appreciated. And let's see here. I think I mentioned that about the parking. I mentioned it early under item 9 about this. Do we round up, round down? Do we round across, and which row rounds which way? And because we're going to talk about potential parking reductions, I think that's important. That's the real operational of how the person comes in and says, I need one space for 250 square feet. My square feet is 2.3. Well, if we're going to say reduce it, how much have we reduced because we didn't round up or round down? So I think that's it. But again, a lot of work, very appreciative, work better on the graphics and the maps, and I'll be a lot more happy.
Councilmember Lopez?
Thank you. As everyone said, a lot of great work in a short amount of time, and I'm really fascinated by some of the data that's coming out of this, and I'm interested to see how that develops as it moves along through the process. Data on what we have now that's useful for decision making. So I appreciate that. My main comment is going to be, I mean, Councilmember Gibbons, what you said about the history was just perfectly stated, and I hope people follow you up on looking at that book and maybe others. It's going to be hard to get a survey exactly perfect, but I think, and I appreciate having all of it here in the appendix. What I think the real value of a survey is not necessarily in the sheet with all of the different pictures and then the rankings of them. Because you're right, it to some point it's going to be artificial because it's just based off what's being presented. And at the same time, you can't present people with 100, 200 different options. It's just not feasible. But what I thought was really rich and helpful to me was hearing the comments where people had more of a free response. And overwhelmingly, the statement that came up over and over for me in different phrases or different words, but it was that eclecticness, the diversity, and even people who are saying, oh, well, you know, I might think of this style or that style when I think of something distinctive. A lot of them followed up with, but I appreciate, you know, I want the diversity. So I don't want us to get too boxed into just, oh, this style, this picture here ranked higher, and so that's all we're going to go off. The more qualitative data I thought gave a much better snapshot. That's a little bit more representative. Seeing that the picture of the map with the three neighborhood or regions and the three styles makes me really nervous, because I don't want to get into this quasi Santa Barbara style where maybe it's not across the whole city, but where you have these major parts, you know, the Santa Tomas area, that's such a large area that then might all end up artificially, I think, looking the same. So that would make me really nervous. And I think it'd be a disservice to the feedback that's already coming up here, but certainly to the community. One piece of advice that I would have is that I think the developer stakeholder meeting is going to be really important. And I would really urge, even if it takes more advanced planning on staff's part or on the participants' part, I'd really, what's going to be useful to me, and I think to the council coming out of that, is as much specificity as possible. So people might throw up their hands and say, too expensive, you know, we're totally against this. And then we have to weigh, oh, you know, one group says it's too expensive and nothing will get done. Another group, you know, wants this. What's going to be really helpful is to get into the specific trade-offs of why something might work or not work or work less well, and what some dollar amounts are associated with that, that I think will help get the more holistic decision than just saying, you know, oh, you know, this might not work. So that would just be my feedback for that piece of the process that I think is going to be really important. I just hope we get really specific and therefore useful data that comes out of it. But otherwise, I'm eager to see this keep moving forward. So thank you.
Vice Mayor Bybee.
So I just have a few comments. I realize that this was really just more of a touch point and a progress report to the council. So I don't, I'll wait until, excuse me, until we get further into the process and it comes to the council for our input. But a couple of points that I wanted to make is I do agree that the graphics and the maps and the charts that are included, really to keep in mind that it is, some of us are looking at it on either a laptop or a small iPad. I have a luxury at home to have a larger screen, so I'm able to, you know, zone in on it, but it's not conducive when I come to a council meeting to be able to do that. So keep that in mind as you're presenting information for the public. And then to me, the goal of this really should be that we are providing standards that provide diversity and variety in our neighborhoods. And it's not just a one size fits all, or that this neighborhood should be this or that this area should be that. I'm looking toward to having some options and variety and trying to keep Campbell unique rather than saying we should have Spanish architecture or we should have cannery type designs.
And I'll echo some of that. I think good job overall. I think that the key takeaway, like as Vice Mayor said, I think it's probably more appropriate to comment when something comes back later to us, but the standards doesn't mean we lose variety. So let's not pigeonhole into one kind of design or restrict to one kind of design. I think makes sense to have a variety, diversity. And, we got to be careful. These surveys are not really statistically accurate, or whoever shows up. But what you always learn from that is that there's no one opinion, and there's just so many different ideas of what somebody likes, somebody hates. So I hope we wind up with a lot of diversity and variety is a better word probably. And then I'll do what you recommended here, and I'll receive the report, and I'll end it that way. So you don't need, Bill, we don't need a motion to do that. So yeah, briefly if you can, because
I know. I would just encourage the applicant and council members to go look at Cupertino's new Cupertino downtown town area on Stevens Creek. I sent staff a picture of it. It's a very, very large area, but our area of the Safeway is also a very large area. And it's an excellent example of a complete mixture of architectural styles, architectural heights, housing, and commercial. So it's really, it's a massive project, but yet it has the potential to express what I was looking for to say. So I offer that as a good place for everybody to go visit. There's great restaurants there, even though it's a neighboring city.
Okay. Last comment.
Last final quick comment. What makes Campbell unique and what makes us special? And a lot of these examples, it's anywhere USA. It could be in any city, could be anywhere. What brings that example to Campbell, and what is our unique small town charm?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Rob and team. With that, I will adjourn the next regularly scheduled council meeting Tuesday, October 4th, 2022.
Skip council reports.